Chapter 1229. Lisa hugged the huge combat bag and climbed to a higher place. The smell of the wild was humid and pungent. Mist lingered around the lake. A spearhead viper was coiled on a branch, and its heavy weight made the branch droop. It seemed to have smelled something tempting. It raised its triangular head high, and its vertical pupils focused, gathering a bloodthirsty murderous aura. A dark streak of shadow rushed over. Lisa quickly waved her hand and grabbed the spearhead viper's throat. She raised her eyebrows slightly, as if she was very dissatisfied with its sneak attack. She reached out and stroked its head. The spearhead viper suddenly opened its bloody mouth, baring its sharp fangs. Lisa's cold eyes met with it. Her gaze narrowed, and her two hands tore the spearhead viper apart. Blood and flesh splattered on the ground, and the corpse was thrown heavily into the grass. A group of ants was ready to move, and they gathered around the body of the spearhead viper. She picked a few ripe wild fruits from the tree and handed them to Mui Chen and Yu Yu. "Eat." Mui Chen glanced at her, and then took the fruit from her hand. He wiped the dew and mud on the fruit on his clothes, and took a bite. It was sour, bitter, and astringent. He frowned. Yu Yu also took a bite, and closed his eyes because of the sourness. The taste was really indescribable. Lisa sat beside him, picked up a wild fruit, and took a bite. She swallowed it calmly. Her body was exhausted, and her stomach was already empty due to the high-intensity battle, so she had to pick some wild fruits along the way to fill her stomach. "What time is it now?" Yu Yu asked. Lisa looked up at the sky and then said, 5 o'clock in the morning. "Let's continue." Yu Yu stood up. "We have to get back before 10 o'clock. "I'll carry you." Mui Chen walked forward and said. Yu Yu waved his hand. "No need. I can walk by myself." As he spoke, he stubbornly propped up his tired body and walked in front. Mui Chen's heart ached. He hurriedly walked forward and carefully protected him. In the hospital ward, Mu Wanru was shot in the abdomen. After emergency treatment, she was transferred to the ward for observation. Only then was she out of danger. At this moment, she was lying quietly on the bed, with tubes all over her body. Her face was sickly pale, and she was still unconscious. At dawn, her eyelids trembled and she finally woke up. However, the moment he woke up and opened his eyes, he was shocked by a black shadow sitting on the edge of the bed. That black shadow sat silently by the bed with his back to the window. Against the light, she couldn't see his face at all. She could only feel the cold air emitting from his body. Mu Wanru screamed in shock, breaking the long silence in the ward. "Ah!" In the next second, the lights flickered and the ward lit up. Mu Lianjue's expressionless face came into view. When she finally saw who was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face twitched violently. She finally heaved a sigh of relief, but she was still frightened by his gloomy face. Her heart skipped a beat, and she felt a little suffocated. She did not know how long she had been unconscious, but when she finally passed the critical period and woke up in a daze, she could not help feeling nervous when she saw his gloomy face. What happened? Why did he look like this? What exactly happened? He coldly said, "Humph. You're finally awake." Chapter 1230. Fortunately, Mui Chen was distracted for a split second and opened fire. The bullet penetrated her abdomen, but even so, it almost took her life. Mu Wanru's whitewashed lips trembled. Her heartbeat quickened at his unfriendly tone. "Fourth uncle, why do you look so terrible? Did something happen?" He snorted coldly and ignored her. Just 2 hours ago, he received a report from his subordinate. The underground warehouse where the hostages were kept had been massacred by a mysterious troop. It was a bloodbath because only a few soldiers survived out of the 100-odd people. Even if they survived, their injuries were very serious. Some of them even lost their heartbeats on the way to the hospital before they could be rescued. The scene was a mess with blood flowing like a river. It was said that there were not many traces of a struggle. It could be said that the 100-odd people were wiped out in a second. As for the 2 hostages, they were naturally taken away and there was no news of them. Mu Lianjue was so angry that he almost had a heart attack. In a fit of rage, he scolded his subordinates harshly. He had sent 3 batches of troops to guard the place, but they were all taken away. He was so angry that he could not speak. Not long after, there was another piece of news. It was said that the 2 children got into a car and left first. There was no news of the 5 cars of troops sent to chase after them. They followed the tracks on the road and found signs of a car crash at a remote cliff. They speculated that it had been hit and fell off the cliff. It was hard to tell what had happened in the dark of the night. They only knew that the battle seemed to be fierce along the way, but the 2 children were nowhere to be seen. They had sent more men to continue tracking them, but there was still no sign of them. Mu Lianjue's usually calm face showed a rare hint of anxiety. He was burning with anxiety. These 2 children were the biggest bargaining chips in his hands. If he lost these 2 chess pieces, it could be said that he had lost everything. Life or death depended on a single thought. Mu Lianjue's posture as if he were facing a formidable enemy startled Mu Wanru. She leaned forward slightly and was about to ask him how things were going when the slight movement affected the wound on her abdomen, causing her to grimace in pain. However, he suddenly thought of something. Mu Wanru was startled, and her hand slowly moved to her lower abdomen. It was extremely flat. Moreover, the sharp pain from her stomach caused her expression to change drastically. What happened? She gently placed her palm on her abdomen, but she could no longer feel the new life jumping around. In the past, when she touched her belly, she could feel the little life inside. But now, it was like a dead pool of water, without any response. Where's the child? Could it be? Child. A look of panic suddenly flashed across Mu Wanru's face. She was so anxious that she couldn't sit still. Mu Lianjue glanced at her and knew what she was thinking. He expressionlessly asked, "Children? It's gone. The child is gone." Mu Wanru was stunned as if she had been struck by lightning. "Yes. Not only the child, but your womb has also been removed." In order to save her, the doctor had no choice but to remove her uterus. Of course, the child was miscarried. Mu Wanru's eyes widened in shock. Her whole face had a strange feeling of emptiness. It was so hard. It was so hard to get the chance to be a mother, but now it was gone. Chapter 1231. Ha ha, ha. She suddenly let out a few dry laughs. In her lifeless eyes, there was a bit of grief, a bit of sorrow, but more than that, there was a boundless darkness. As she laughed, her laughter turned into sobs. She clutched her clothes tightly as bean-sized tears rolled down her cheeks uncontrollably. For some reason, when Mu Wanru found out that the child in her womb was gone, her heart sank. When she first found out that she was pregnant, she hated the new life in her womb so much that she could not wait for it to disappear without a trace. She did not like this child. Because this child could not bring her any benefits, she hated this new life that came out of nowhere. However, for the past 2 months, she could feel that the little life in her womb was growing tenaciously. How magical was this? Subconsciously, a trace of maternal instinct was awakened. She was no longer thinking of strangling this miracle of life in her belly. She wanted to give birth to this child and keep it. She wanted to keep her and Aaron's bloodline and raise them. At that time, she suddenly realized that she more or less had some feelings for Aaron. At least, after Aaron was assassinated by Mu Lianjue, she hid under the blanket and cried bitterly for a few nights because of this matter. Now that she found out that the child was gone, she felt as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out. All of a sudden, she understood how Xianxia felt. The child in her womb had once stimulated her maternal instinct. However, the moment she lost her child, that heart-wrenching pain made her instantly understand what kind of state Xianxia was in as a mother. It must be very painful. It must be even more painful than her. She finally understood what it was like to be a mother. Sometimes people could be so cheap. When they had it, they did not know how to cherish it. Once they lost it, they regretted it. When they wanted to cherish it, there was no chance at all. Why? Why do you care about that bastard in your womb? Mu Lianjue sneered as soon as he said that. Haven't you always wanted to abort this child? This time, your wish is granted. Mu Wanru lowered her head and looked at her flat stomach in disbelief. Her pale face was as if it had been brushed with a layer of white powder. She widened her eyes without blinking and a few drops of tears fell in a daze. Aaron's gentle words suddenly rang in her ears. Come with me. I'll bring you far away from all this trouble. Memories flashed before her eyes like a revolving lantern. She opened her eyes. Aaron seemed to be standing in front of her and slowly spreading his palm to her. Don't worry. I'll work very hard to earn money to support the family. Wanru, the child in your womb is our child. I'm willing to acknowledge it, I'm. Deep in my heart, I'm. What about you? Are you willing to give birth to him? Chapter 1232. Wanru, I love you with all my heart. Although I can't give you wealth, I'll work hard and use my hands to create a stable life for you. Wanru, I love you with all my heart and have never changed. For you, I entered the Mu group. For you, I've done so many evil things for you, but now you're leaving me. Wanru, is your heart so hard? Erin's affectionate eyes were still lingering in front of her. However, in the next second, the scene of him falling to the wall and dying after being shot flashed across her mind. She suddenly broke down and covered her eyes, wailing loudly. Ah! Don't die! A voice in her heart screamed in despair. Erin, don't die! Don't leave me! She curled her body into a ball all of a sudden and started crying in despair and helplessness. Only now did she suddenly realize that she was wrong. So completely wrong. She should not have pushed him away back then. She should have listened to him then. She did not want wealth, nor did she want to worry about food and clothing. She really did not want to live such a frightening life anymore. Looking back, her life was neither long nor short, but it seemed that Alan was the only one who truly loved her and protected her without any complaints or regrets. When they were at the welfare center, the children loved her because she shared her snacks and clothes with them. When they returned to the Mu family, Mu Xing doted on her because she had stolen Xianxia's identity. All along, she had been an imposter. If not for this identity, why would he dote on her so much? Erin, on the other hand, was willing to sacrifice silently for her. He even wanted to bring her far away from trouble and escape far away. At that time he said to her, I'll bring you away. Let's leave this place and live an ordinary life. Even if we don't have great wealth, I'll do my best for your happiness. However, she missed out on such a man who was so devoted to her. At that time, she was greedy for wealth and glory. At that point, she had nowhere to retreat and could not let go. She was indignant, so she did not listen to his advice at all. With so many opportunities, she was perhaps only one step away from happiness. What about now? She was so tired. So tired. All the time. He was trembling with fear and trepidation. She didn't want to live like this anymore. But now, it was too late for regrets. There was no medicine for regret in this world, nor was there a second chance. She didn't know what kind of life awaited her. Did Mu Sheng see through her identity? Knowing that she had colluded with Mu Lianjue to poison his medicine and kept the truth from him for years, he must hate her. She was more afraid that he would be disappointed in her than hate her. Mu Sheng had always treated her as his own daughter, yet she had plotted against him out of greed for wealth and glory. God, she was really ruthless. Now, she really felt like she had fallen into a bottomless abyss. The child was gone, and her life was in Mu Lianjue's hands. Her life was in danger. She suddenly yearned for an ordinary life. Even if she didn't have power or wealth, if she could have a man who loved her and a warm little family, it seemed so extravagant to her now. She clearly had a chance. She also once had a man who loved her deeply without any complaints or regrets. Chapter 1233. Initially, when the child was still around, she still had a sliver of hope in her heart. However, when she learned that she had lost her child with Alan, her heart seemed to have been torn open with a bloody hole, and she fell into the endless darkness. Mu Wanru was filled with regret. Clutching her aching heart, she cried heartbreakingly. I'm sorry, she whimpered. At this moment, she really regretted everything she had done from the bottom of her heart. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. She repeated it 1,000 times in her heart, clutching her heart as tears streamed down her face. She was wrong. She should not have slandered Xianxia as a thief for the sake of fighting for affection. She was wrong. She should not have stolen her jade and replaced her identity for a moment of greed. She was wrong. She should not have schemed everywhere for glory and wealth. She was wrong. She should not have used unscrupulous means to harm Mu Sheng in order to achieve her goal. She was really wrong. She should not have pushed Erin away. That man who loved and protected her with his life. That man who appeared in her life and once revered her as a treasure. Woo 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 woo. Mu Wanru wailed at the top of her lungs. Having lost her flesh and blood, she was instantly disheartened. It was as if her entire life was bleak. Even breathing was so tiring. Mu Lianjue was frustrated. What are you crying for? What's there to cry for? Didn't you always not want this child? Isn't it just as you wished now? Mu Wanru looked up with reddened eyes. Her lips trembled violently as she shook her head, unable to utter a coherent sentence. Woo woo woo. She only cared about crying. She was so sad that she was like an orphan abandoned by the world. Mu Lianjue was so upset that his phone rang at the wrong time. He stood up abruptly and said, Useless B*TCH, do you know that you only know how to cry? My plan has been ruined by you. What? Those 2 children have been kidnapped. Mu Lianjue paused and looked at her with sharp eyes. Mu Wanru, oh Mu Wanru, my great cause has been ruined by you. Mu Wanru was stunned, but it was as if something had suddenly burst out from her heart. Her face paled, and she smiled miserably in relief. Hee hee, hee hee, hee hee. Lunatic. Mu Lianjue swung his arm and left. Mu Wanru looked out of the window expressionlessly. There seemed to be something burning in her heart, turning into a pile of withered ashes. There was no trace of life on her face. Alan, I was wrong. Her eyes were empty as she muttered. What glory and wealth? It's all fake, all fake. Only you are real. So can you come back? Come back and accompany me, okay? I'm all alone now. The child is gone. You're gone too. What do I have left? I should have left with you back then. I should have gone far away with you. Away from all these troubles. Why was I so foolish back then? What's so good about glory and wealth? Memories flew. When they first met in university, Alan stood in front of her with his head lowered and a hint of shyness on his face. Hello, I'm Hani Min. Hani Min was his name. During her 4 years in university, he had always been by her side silently, protecting her without making a sound. Perhaps in his world, it was just as he said. Being by her side was the happiest thing in his life. Chapter 1234. After graduation, she joined Dishing Financial Group and became the head of the Human Resources Department. He also joined Mu Group and became Mu Yaja's special assistant. All this time, he only had eyes for her. Why was this man so stupid? Mu Wanru suddenly sat up straight and looked out of the window. It was dawn, and the sun was rising from the east. However, her heart was still trapped in the darkness and could not wake up. Her heart was really dead. There was no more life in it. Mu Wanru lowered her head with empty eyes. The tears in her eyes seemed to have dried up, and not a single drop would flow out. She suddenly became ruthless and pulled off the tubes, needles, and respirators on her body. Then, she turned over and got off the bed. It was as if she could no longer feel pain. Even if her wound was affected and blood seeped out and flowed down her clothes all the way to her thighs, she seemed to be numb and could no longer feel the pain from her body. Mu Wanru stumbled a few steps and her body swayed. She supported herself against the wall and slowly walked toward the washroom. She walked into the washroom and looked at the mirror. She looked haggard and disheveled. Especially her eyes. There was no color of life in them. At that moment, she actually had some illusions in front of her eyes. In the mirror, Alan and her were facing each other. The tenderness on his handsome face almost made her fall into it. Wanru, come with me, okay? Let's go far away together and live a happy and ordinary life. Okay. Is that okay? Is that okay? He asked gently over and over again. Mu Wanru's tears fell. She could not help but reach out to him. When her fingertips touched the mirror, it was as if she could feel the warmth of his hand. Okay. Mu Wanru smiled sweetly. Her eyes were so gentle that it seemed as if tears were about to drip out. She suddenly put her face against the mirror longingly as if she was snuggling in his arms. Her weak voice could not help but murmur. Alan, I was wrong. I really know that I was wrong. Don't leave me. I'm the one who hurt you. I'm sorry. Forgive me, okay? Mu Wanru cried sadly. Alan, I was wrong. Forgive me, okay? Take me away, okay? Fool. Alan smiled, his handsome eyes overflowing with soft light. Give me your hand, I'll take you away. Don't be afraid, I will protect you forever. Mu Wanru smiled sadly. Her face finally regained some warmth as she nodded heavily. Yes. Fourth Master, a few subordinates have sent news that the 2 children have not been found yet, but it is very likely that they have met with misfortune. What do you mean? Mu Lianjue narrowed his eyes and gripped the phone tightly. On the road where the child was kidnapped, there was a car accident. The oil tank leaked and exploded. When we arrived, the car had already fallen off the cliff. When we were salvaging the wreckage, we found traces of a chase along the road. He must have gone through a battle. The car fell off a cliff. Mu Lianjue's eyes widened in surprise. Yes. Then, what are the chances of the two children surviving? With a 0% chance of survival, the chances of survival are extremely slim. That area is surrounded by mountains. Once you fall off the cliff, there's no chance of survival. How can you be sure that they fell off the cliff? Even if they didn't fall off the cliff, they would have to pass through a forest where wild beasts roam. Plus, it's very cold in the middle of the night. The chances of survival are even slimmer. Chapter 1235. Mu Lianjue snorted. Whether they're dead or alive, hurry and find those two children. I want to see them, dead or alive. Yes, fourth master. He suddenly thought of something and asked, also, is there any news from the Mu family? No, fourth master. Mu Yaja doesn't seem to know about this and thinks that the children are in your hands. Very good. Report to me immediately if there's any news from the Mu family. Yes, I'll keep an eye on it. This morning at 9:30 a.m. Proceed as planned. Yes, fourth master. Mu Lianjue hung up the phone and walked into the ward. The moment he opened the door, he was greeted by the smell of blood. Frowning, he walked to the bed, but there was no one there. He had only been gone for about 10 minutes. How did she disappear? His gaze fell on the scattered needles and tubes on the bed. His eyes suddenly caught sight of the bloodstains on the snow-white bedsheet. What kind of trouble did that D*MN woman create for him again? He followed the bloodstains on the floor and walked to the bathroom door. The thick smell of blood almost overwhelmed him. He frowned and pushed the door, but it seemed to be locked from the inside. Mu Wanru, are you in there? He shouted, but there was no response. He held his breath and focused, only to hear a strange sound coming from the bathroom. Splash, splash, splash. It seemed to be the sound of flowing water. Startled, he did not think much of it. He lifted his leg and kicked the door wide open. Bang! The fragile door was on the verge of collapsing. Mu Lianjue strode in. Just as he entered, he saw Mu Wanru lying beside the bathtub. She was holding a fruit knife and ruthlessly cutting her arms, wrists and thighs. He was stunned and stood rooted to the ground. Mu Wanru's entire arm was covered in wounds and was badly mutilated. The bathtub was filled with water, and her wrists were soaked in the water, causing pools of blood to ripple in the water. She still did not know the pain and continued to stab herself. Her entire body was in a numb state, as if she could no longer feel pain. It was almost masochistic. It was not purely to scare people, but to really cut with force. Blood flowed out and dyed the snow-white hospital gown red. From afar, it looked like he had been fished out from a blood pool. What are you doing? Alarmed, Mu Lianjue walked over and questioned her harshly. Previously, when Mu Wanru woke up, her condition was not very good. When she found out that her child was lost, he could tell that her mental state was a little abnormal, but he didn't take it to heart. And now he was hiding here to torture himself? Could it be that the loss of the child was such a heavy blow to her? Mu Lianjue rushed over and grabbed her hand to stop her. What are you doing? Mu Wanru froze and raised her head abruptly. The moment her empty eyes saw him, they were instantly tainted with a hint of viciousness and viciousness. It's you! Oh! Her sudden roar made him confused. What do you mean? Chapter 1236. Mu Lianjue had been in the military when he was young. Although he was getting on in years, he still had some experience in martial arts. He snatched the fruit knife from her hand and kicked it far away, easily subduing her. Are you crazy? Are you trying to kill yourself and bring me bad luck? Mu Lianjue roared and pushed her to the side. Mu Wanru's body swayed, and she staggered before falling on her back beside the toilet bowl. She looked up, and her gaze was as sharp as a poisonous arrow as it ruthlessly pierced him. Who else could it be if not you? It's all your fault. You killed my child. That's my own flesh and blood, and it's all your fault. Give him back to me. Give him back to me. Mu Wanru screamed at him at the top of her lungs. She got up from the floor like a madwoman and pounced on him again with bared fangs and brandished claws. He gave her a slap, but she did not seem to feel pain at all. Like a malicious spirit that had crawled out of hell, she pounced on him. "You lunatic!" Mu Lianjue gripped her hand tightly. His eyes narrowed dangerously. "Mu Wanru, don't play the fool here. I won't fall for your tricks. You ruined all my plans, and I haven't settled the score with you yet. Why? Do you think that I won't do anything to you if you play the fool?" He paused for a moment before saying coldly, "Besides, am I the one who killed your child?" "No. You'd better get to the bottom of this. Who is the one who killed your child?" Mu Wanru smiled sinisterly like a vengeful spirit. "Who else could it be if not you? If not you, who else could it be? Have you forgotten?" His face was sullen. "It's Mui Chen. If he didn't shoot you, you wouldn't have been able to save your child. To be precise, it's Mui Chen who killed your child. Do you understand?" "Mui Chen, it's him, it's Mui Chen." Mu Wanru stared blankly and muttered like a madwoman. "Mui Chen, it's him who killed my child, it's him." She suddenly grabbed her hair with a ferocious expression and pulled it hard. "It's him. He killed my child. Ha ha ha. I want him to pay with his life. I want him to pay with his life." The medical team rushed over. As soon as the nurse went up to her, Mu Wanru scratched her with her hand. Unexpectedly, she scratched the nurse's face. "Don't come over. Don't touch me. You all want to harm me, don't you?" "Scram!" Mu Wanru shouted. She looked like she had lost her mind, as if she had gone crazy. Everyone looked at each other. They knew that Mu Wanru must have suffered a huge blow from losing her child, which caused her to fall into a deranged state. They had to stabilize the patient's emotions first before proceeding with further treatment. When the nurse brought over a stun baton, everyone pounced on her and held her by the shoulders to control her. Mu Wanru was still struggling, her hands flailing wildly. A doctor walked over and took out the stun baton. She shuddered violently and convulsed all over before collapsing to the ground. Before she fainted, she still gritted her teeth and muttered, "Mui Chen, it's you, it's you, it's you." Mu Wanru was then transferred to the emergency room for rescue. After this farce, Mu Lianjue only felt unlucky. He cursed and ordered, "Watch her carefully." With that he left. Chapter 1237. At dawn, the sun rose from the east. In the rainforest, the dew was heavy, and the cold moisture invaded his body. Yu felt that his joints were stiff and cold. From time to time, the howls of wild beasts could be heard in the forest. Mu Chen held a dagger in one hand and a torch in the other. He walked in front to explore the path and cut off the vines that obstructed their path. Lisa walked at the back and looked around vigilantly from time to time. Mu Chen muttered, "How much longer until we can leave this place?" "It's not far." Yu felt a little weak. He was so tired that he felt like he was going to collapse at any time. He had not rested well for 2 days and 2 nights. He had overdrawn his strength for a long time and had not eaten or drunk anything for a day and night. He was hungry and cold. His physical condition had hit rock bottom. Mu Chen comforted him. "Soon we can leave this place soon." Yu suddenly stopped in his tracks. His breathing was a little rapid. Lisa walked forward and carried him on her back without a word. Yu was stubborn. He was reluctant at first, but now that he was exhausted, he did not have any strength left to struggle. He did not struggle too much and simply let her carry him. "Thank you." He lowered his voice and said awkwardly. Lisa said expressionlessly, "You're my master." In other words, it was her responsibility to protect him. It was also her job. Yu pursed his lips. This girl was really stubborn. She was like a cold machine that meticulously followed the program settings and did not know fatigue. Did she not feel tired? The 3 of them shuttled through the forest. Although Lisa carried Yu on her back, she was physically strong. She was wearing a combat uniform that was filled with lead. She was much heavier than Yu and Xiao Chen combined. Therefore, she did not feel tired. On the other hand, Xiao Chen's footsteps gradually slowed down, perhaps because he was injured. At this moment, there was a sudden rustling sound coming from the forest ahead. Mu Chen was startled and somewhat frightened by the sound. Just as he was about to step forward to investigate, Lisa suddenly stopped him and shushed him, indicating that he should not act rashly. In the silence, in the dark forest, 2 pairs of yellow and sharp eyes suddenly flashed slightly in the dense bushes. Then, Two creatures that looked similar to wolves and dogs slowly walked out from the dense forest. Two pairs of sharp eyes stared at them like tigers eyeing their prey. What is this? Mu Yichen could not help but feel suffocated. Lisa narrowed her eyes. After examining the two creatures in front of her, she suddenly said, "Wolves!" Wolf. Mu Yichen was secretly frightened. They seemed to have encountered a situation that they did not want to happen. Yu also frowned and sized them up. However, he said, "No, they are something fiercer than wolves." He had read about them in the animal encyclopedia before. They were definitely not wolves. Lisa frowned slightly. When she heard this, she could not help but take a small step back. Yu added in a deep voice behind her, "These are two jackals." Jackals. There was an idiom called jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards. Thus, it was obvious that jackals and wolves were ferocious. Usually, they hunted in pairs, which was very rare among wild beasts. In fact, there were always some people who confused jackals and wolves. In fact, jackals and wolves were not wolves. They were much smaller than wolves. Chapter 1238. They usually hunted in groups and were very alert. Their sense of smell was especially developed, and they were most active in the morning and evening. Jackals and wolves were very ferocious, and they liked to chase. After discovering their prey, they would gather together to hunt. In ancient times, there was a legend that said jackals were the nemesis of tigers. An individual jackal's attack power was slightly lower than a wolf's, but a pack of jackals was more tenacious than a pack of wolves. Different packs of jackals would cooperate to attack tigers and leopards. There were no racial differences, which greatly increased the survival ability of jackals. Two jackals walked out of the bushes side by side. A pair of gloomy eyes stared at the three intruders standing in front of them who had invaded their territory. From time to time, they would bare their teeth and let out eerie and terrifying howls. Lisa and Mu Yichen didn't move. Jackals loved to chase their prey. They especially liked to gather their companions to surround their prey and then eat them. When she was on a mission in the past, Lisa had also been surrounded by jackals. But at that time she was different. She was fully armed. Even if she was in a pack of jackals, she could easily kill her way out with a rocket launcher. But now it was different. She had already run out of ammunition. Wait! Lisa suddenly remembered that there were still 2 bullets in the pistol. She looked at the 2 jackals in front of her vigilantly. Her hand slowly reached to her waist, grabbed the pistol, and pulled it out. "Retreat!" She lowered her voice and ordered. Mu Yichen glanced at her. He carefully looked at the 2 jackals that were full of aggression and slowly retreated. "Woohoo!" The wolf let out a warning whimper and suddenly raised its neck. The wolf's howl echoed in the empty mountain forest, as if it was summoning the pack and calling for companions. Lisa suddenly pulled out her gun and shot. The bullet hit the head of one of the jackals. Blood splattered. It was a headshot in an instant. It was terrifyingly accurate. Without waiting for the other jackal to react, Lisa suddenly reloaded and shot at the other jackal's head. Bang! However, jackals were famous for their agility. The moment the bullet left the chamber, it reacted quickly. Poof! The bullet missed by a few millimeters and hit its chest. It howled and fell to the ground. Its limbs twitched violently as it kept struggling. Mu Yichen immediately went forward and almost didn't give it any chance to struggle. He grabbed its head with one hand and broke its head. The jackal let out a whimper and quickly stopped breathing. It was dead. Yu's heart calmed down, but he felt an inexplicable sense of uneasiness. He still remembered the introduction to jackals in the encyclopedia. Jackals and wolves were social animals. Most of them were strong and cunning leaders, who led one or several families to gather temporarily. This meant that there were more than 2 jackals and wolves in this area. Next, his guess was quickly confirmed. Mu Yichen stood up and suddenly heard a rustling sound not far away. He turned his head abruptly and looked over, only to see several pairs of yellow eyes flickering in and out of the bushes. It was a pack of jackals. Oh no! Yu had a bad feeling and his heart trembled. Mu Yichen slowly retreated and stayed close to Lisa. He frowned vigilantly. According to his estimation, there were about a dozen jackals surrounding them. Chapter 1239. In the darkness, the fire from the torches dazzled their eyes. The strong light created a huge visual barrier for them and scared the wolves back a little. Taking advantage of their short and sluggish reaction, Mui Chen growled. Run! Lisa carried Yu Yu on her back and turned to run with Mui Chen. The wolves caught up with them very quickly. Lisa carried Yu Yu on her back but still ran very fast. In her fear, all her potential was stimulated and her movements were as swift as an agile leopard. Mui Chen didn't show any signs of weakness and ran very fast. In his panic, he accidentally tripped on the broken branches on the ground and fell to his knees. Lisa heard the commotion and turned her head around. She saw a jackal pouncing towards Mui Chen with its fangs bared and claws brandished. She took a step forward and swung her fist at its head. Awoo! The jackal was sent flying by the punch and rolled a few times on the ground. It stood up abruptly with a flash of fear in its eyes. Following that, it glared at Lisa and panted. Its greedy saliva dripped down its sharp fangs. It knew how dangerous Lisa was and didn't dare to act rashly. It panted heavily and tried to take a step forward from time to time, sharpening its knife. Mui Chen was shocked and stood up abruptly. He saw that Lisa's knuckles were dripping with blood. Just now, in a moment of desperation, she didn't think much and swung her fist over. She hit the jackal's head, but her fist met its teeth. Her skin and flesh immediately split open. Are you okay? Mui Chen looked guilty. Lisa didn't say anything and held Yu Yu with one hand and Mui Chen's hand with the other. She turned around and ran. Behind him, the jackals and wolves continued to eye him covetously. As Mui Chen ran, he swept the torch in his hand at them in an attempt to intimidate them. However, he was wrong about one thing. Wild beasts were afraid of fire, but the fire they were afraid of was the kind that spread over a large area and spread quickly. The torches in people's hands did not have much of an effect on them. If the animals are determined to attack you, the torch itself is useless. Sometimes the animals feel threatened and take measures to fight back. For example, if you hold a torch at night, you are more likely to be attacked by poisonous snakes in the grass. Therefore, the jackals were not afraid of the torch in his hand. Or perhaps, they were really hungry and had a strong desire to attack. Yu Yu lowered his head and looked at Lisa's hand. It was covered in blood. He could not help but frown. Lisa ran as fast as she could, but no matter how fast she was, she couldn't match the speed of the jackals. A jackal pounced on her and pushed her to the ground. Yu Yu was thrown to the side. Mui Chen hurriedly reached out and grabbed his hand. However, in the next second, Yu Yu felt the ground under his feet sink in. It was a trap. He shouted in his heart, but it was too late. His whole body fell down. Mui Chen held his arm tightly, but he couldn't withstand the weight of his falling body. The two of them rolled down the hole together. Lisa was shocked when she saw this. The jackal that pounced on her pressed down on her shoulders with its paws. Its stinky breath assaulted her nostrils and its saliva dripped onto her face. Its pair of eyes stared at her fiercely. Chapter 1240. She gripped its neck tightly, grabbed its upper and lower jaws, and twisted it with all her might. The jackal howled in pain and struggled to get away from her. Lisa stood up while panting heavily. She pulled out a machete from her waist belt and glanced warily at the pack of wolves that surrounded her. A jackal that was standing at the head of the pack suddenly pounced on her. She held the machete in her hand and swung it fiercely, piercing through its throat. Perhaps this scene was enough to intimidate the pack of wolves behind her. They were frightened by her violent actions and retreated a few steps. Their bloodshot eyes were filled with fear. Lisa walked over and choked the throat of the wolf that she had just pierced through. She raised the Malaysian saber in her hand high up and beheaded it with a single stroke. Then, she kicked its head into the pack of wolves. The pack of wolves let out sorrowful and frightened howls. This jackal was their leader. Now that the pack of wolves had lost their leader, they naturally lost their will to fight. In the blink of an eye, they scattered like birds. Lisa walked to the entrance of the cave, picked up the flashlight, and shone it into the cave. It was dark and cold in the cave. Yu Yu raised his head in a sorry state. He propped himself up with both arms and groped around. Then, he heard a creaking sound and felt a sharp pain in his arm. His face instantly contorted in pain. He groaned a few times and struggled to pull his arm out. It was caught by a trap. The sharp teeth had bitten into his flesh. Fortunately, the trap was not big, so the wound was not very serious. Yu Yu took a few deep breaths. His other hand groped around in the darkness and finally touched a cold arm. He quickly pushed aside the pile of withered grass and struggled to help Mui Chen up. When Yu Yu fell into the cave earlier, his feet stepped on the pit, so his body landed first. The ground of the cave was covered with a thick layer of grass. Therefore, other than a few bruises on his body, he was fine. The moment Mu Yichen fell into the cave, he instinctively grabbed Yu Yu's arm. His head was facing down, and the moment he fell, his head hit the rock wall. Therefore, his consciousness was a little muddled. The flashlight shone down. Yu Yu raised his head and saw Lisa asking, "How are you?" "I'm fine." He turned his head and gently patted Mu Yichen's cheek. Bro, how are you?" Mu Yichen slowly opened his eyes and hissed in pain. He rubbed the spot where he had been hit earlier and felt a sticky trace of blood. His head was broken and blood was seeping out. Amid the pain, Mu Yichen sobered up a little. Yu Yu said angrily, You, don't you know that this is dangerous?" "Yes, idiot. Can't you?" Yu Yu was exasperated. Mu Yichen was stunned, but he quickly understood the meaning of his words. Yu Yu was angry. When he fell into the trap, Mu Yichen clearly had the chance to let go, but he grabbed his arm tightly and did not let go. Was he an idiot? Did he not know that he was in more danger than him? Mu Yichen did not think so much. It was almost an instinctive reaction. He only thought that no matter what happened, he had to protect his younger brother until the last moment. He could not leave him behind. Lisa looked down and asked, "What happened? Are you hurt?" "Yes, I'm a little hurt." Chapter 1241. Mu Yichen immediately took out the dagger tied to his thigh and poked it between his teeth. After much effort, Yu Yu's arm was finally free. Lisa threw a bottle of medicine for emergencies. Mu Yichen immediately grabbed Yu Yu's arm and applied the medicine to his wound. Yu Yu couldn't stand the pain and couldn't help but groan a few times. His shoulders heaved up and down uncontrollably, and his scalp was numb. "It hurts a little. Bear with it." Mu Yichen didn't stop what he was doing. After the bleeding stopped completely, he pulled up the hem of his clothes, tilted his head, and used his mouth to pick up a corner. He tore off a piece of cloth and skillfully bandaged the wound. Yu Yu bit the end of the cloth and tied a dead knot. Immediately, he collapsed next to Lang Moli, panting heavily. Lisa stood at the entrance of the cave and observed for a while. It was a very new trap. It was probably set up not long ago. The hole wasn't deep, but it was about 5 or 6 meters deep. It would be difficult to climb out with bare hands. Lisa said, "Wait for me." With that, she turned and left. Yu Yu leaned against the rock wall. His wound wasn't serious, but it was very cold in the cave. His blood coagulated, and his wound seemed to be frozen. It was excruciatingly painful. Yu Yu's physical strength was almost exhausted. He sat in a daze and didn't have any strength left. Mu Yichen looked around. It was probably a trap used to catch animals. He sat down next to Yu Yu and pulled up his sleeve, but it was already sticky with blood. When he fell on the ground, there was probably a broken arrow at the spot where he fell. At this moment, one end of the broken arrow was inserted into his arm. Along the way, he tried his best to endure the pain. It wasn't until he pulled up his sleeve that he realized that the wound was already bleeding profusely. He absent-mindedly recalled the soul-stirring scene just now, and his emotions were unable to calm down for a long time. If Lisa had not turned around and saved him, the wolf would have bitten his throat in the next second. Yu Yu was shocked when she saw the wound on his arm. "What happened?" "It's nothing. It's just a small injury." He sat up with difficulty, held the dagger in his hand, and used the dagger to cut a hole in his clothes. He carefully tore his clothes and pulled them down to his shoulders. He examined the wound and looked at the half of the arrowhead that was still stuck in the wound. He bit his lip and used the knife to draw a cross on the wound. He grabbed the arrowhead and pulled it out forcefully. Blood spurted out. Mu Yichen wiped off the blood on his face. Looking at the heart of the arrow, he couldn't help but frown deeply. He was worried that the arrowheads were poisoned. This forest was probably frequented by hunters. Many hunters would smear poison on their arrowheads to numb the nerves of wild animals. After hesitating for a moment, he gritted his teeth and kissed the wound. After a while, he turned his head and spat out a mouthful of blood. He frowned and persistently kissed the wound again. Then, he tore off the cloth on his body and quickly wrapped the wound firmly. When he raised his head, he suddenly met Yu Yu's shocked eyes. "What's wrong?" Yu Yu was stunned for a long time. It was not because of anything else, but because Mu Yichen's skills were skillful and swift. Could it be that he often got injured like this? Stupid brother. Do you often get injured? Mu Yichen was stunned for a moment before he slowly nodded. Okay. Why? Chapter 1242. In the past, when I was in the special training camp, I often got injured when I was out in the wild. Yu felt as if his heart had been stabbed. His heart ached for him. All right, don't let your imagination run wild. I'm used to it. Mu Yichen chuckled and reached out to rub his hair. Yu grabbed his hand unhappily. Promise me. You're not allowed to get injured again. Yu stared into his eyes and said word by word. Mu Yichen was stunned. He was a little surprised. Suddenly, he saw undisguised love in Yu's eyes. His heart warmed. All right. I promise you. Okay. Yu leaned back and sat against the jagged stone wall. His back was rubbed against the uneven stone wall. He adjusted the angle of his back and felt better. He was a little tired. He took the opportunity to rest and recuperate. When he closed his eyes, he suddenly heard the sound of someone getting up. He opened his eyes in surprise, only to see a large coat covering her head, blocking all of his vision. Yu waved his hand in an attempt to pull it away, but a strong hand held him back. It's cold here. Don't catch a cold, Mu Yichen said. Aren't you cold? I'm not cold. Mu Yichen sneered. This is nothing. Really? Yu was a little doubtful. Mu Yichen pursed his lips. I'm really not cold. In the winter, I can swim a few times in the lake. But in reality? He was cold too. The cold in the cave was wet and cold. It was so cold that his scalp was numb. When he frowned, he felt that his scalp was almost frozen. After a while, Lisa found some vines and hung them down the stone wall. Climb up, she shouted from above. Mu Yichen stood up. The other end of the rattan was tied tightly to the tree by Lisa. You go first, Mu Yichen said to Yu. Yu shook her head tiredly. Go up first, then pull me up. Okay, wait for me. Mu Yichen grabbed onto the vines with both hands and kicked off the stone wall with the tips of his feet. In no time at all, he climbed up. Turning around, he shouted into the cave, Yu, hurry up and come up. However, he seemed to have forgotten that Yu's hand was injured. Even if Yu was not injured, he would not be able to climb up with his pathetic arm strength. Yu tried for a while, enduring the pain of being cut by the vines, and fell down several times. I think I don't have any strength left. Yu's weak voice was heard. You guys should meet up with the troops first, then think of a way to save me. Lisa frowned. Before she could say anything, Mu Yichen said anxiously, No, I can't leave you here alone. It's safe here. I'll wait for you guys here. After a pause, Yu said helplessly, I really don't have any strength left. I'm so tired. This place is too far from the entrance. I can't climb up at all. I'll go down and carry you. Are you crazy? If he carried him, he would have to bear double the weight. If it was before, he believed that Mu Yichen could do it. However, Mu Yichen was on the verge of exhaustion now. There was no way he could do it. Brother, don't worry. It's safe here. I'll wait here for you guys to save me. Yu's voice was heard again. Mu Yichen still could not bear to see him leave. Chapter 1243. Yu continued, based on my estimation, this place is not far from the rendezvous point. An hour's round trip should be enough. Don't worry, brother, I can hold on. Don't worry about me. Okay. You must wait for me. Yu smiled and ordered, Lisa, protect my brother. Yes, master. Lisa replied respectfully. She also felt that if they continued to drag on, the three of them would be exhausted and none of them would be able to walk out of here. While the two of them still had energy, they should quickly rendezvous with the troops. It was relatively safer for Yu to stay here. Lisa said, Stay here and wait for me. Yu nodded. Lisa turned around and continued on their way. Mu Yichen was conflicted. However, it was indeed relatively safer for Yu to stay here. His stamina was too weak. Mu Yichen also knew that Lisa and he were on the verge of exhaustion. If they met with any accidents along the way, they would not be able to attend to them. Therefore, he gritted his teeth and looked at Yu Yu deeply before he turned around and followed them. Yu Yu closed his eyes and rested. At this moment, he was extremely exhausted. He knew his body's condition very well. It would be extremely difficult for him to stay here and wait for them, let alone follow them on their journey. However, no matter how slim the hope was, as long as he had a little bit of energy left, he would persevere until the very last moment. Yu Yu wrapped himself in the jacket that Mu Yichen had left for him. The cave was cold and damp, and it was almost overwhelming. He felt that all the blood in his body seemed to have solidified, so much so that it was difficult for it to flow. Every blood capillary on his cheeks was frozen, and even the slightest change in expression made his face feel numb. He touched his face and thought that there was a layer of ice on his face. Yu Yu tried her best to keep her eyes open. She was tired and sleepy. When she was freezing, she couldn't help but curl up into a ball like a fragile shrimp in a corner. However, she couldn't resist the cold. Gradually, his eyelids became heavier and heavier. He tried his best to keep his eyes wide open, knowing that his physical strength had reached its limit. However, he could not allow himself to close his eyes. The temperature in the forest was almost 0 degrees Celsius, especially at dawn, when the chill was heavy. He raised his head and looked at the sun rising from the east, but he did not feel the slightest bit of light or heat. He sighed inwardly and felt that he couldn't go on like this. At the very least, he had to stand up and move his body. Otherwise, he would be frozen stiff and feel dizzy. It was as if he would fall unconscious in the next second. In such an environment, if he closed his eyes, he didn't know if he could wake up. Yu Yu stood up and hugged his jacket tighter. He stomped his feet on the spot and walked around the cave. The strong wind blew into the cave entrance. Due to the special structure of the trap, the wind in the cave was especially strong. It blew in like ice water pouring over one's head. Yu Yu gave up. After careful consideration, he decided to find a place where he could shelter himself from the wind for the time being. He found a corner and sat down. He raised his head and looked at the sky in a daze. At this moment, the sky was already slightly bright. Where were Xiao Yichen and Lisa now? Chapter 1244. His back was leaning against the rock wall, which was craggy and jagged. When he fell, his back had hit the sharpest part of the rock. He reckoned that it was because he had lost some weight. His back was stained with dew, and it was painful and itchy. It was as if countless ants were gnawing on his wound. He had not eaten or drunk anything for a day and a night. His throat was almost smoking from coughing. All the bad things had come together to form a hopeless situation. Yu Yu buried his face in his arms, full of hope. When he opened his eyes and looked up again, Xiao Yichen had already reached out to him from inside the cave. After passing through a large forest, there was a road that was several kilometers long. Xiao Yichen and Lisa ran and stopped on the road one after another. They tried their best to establish contact with the troops in the shortest time possible. At this time, the sun was slowly rising from the horizon. Although it was early in the morning, the temperature could not reach them, but it still drove away some of the coldness and brought about a rare warmth. Xiao Yichen's footsteps became heavier and heavier. He was in a state of overload and could collapse at any moment. His condition was worse than Yun Tianyou's. He was covered in injuries. Some of them were not treated in time and were already inflamed, causing excruciating pain. Even so, he didn't slow down at all. That was because Yu Yu was still waiting for him. A minute later meant a minute more danger. Lisa looked at his stiff and forbearing expression, and knew that he was enduring the pain on his body. "I'll carry you," she said. Mu Yichen looked at her in surprise, but he quickly hid the surprise in his eyes and coldly said, "No." She had always respected the strong. In her eyes, Mu Yichen's willpower was shockingly strong, so her impression of him changed somewhat. Mu Yichen's throat was extremely dry. Suddenly, his legs gave way and he fell to the ground. Lisa immediately walked over and reached out to help him. Mu Yichen did not reach out his hand though. His shoulders were heaving violently, and his breathing was rapid. Despite his efforts to restrain himself, his whole body was strangely stiff. Mu Yichen gritted his teeth and slowly stretched his body. He took a deep breath of cold air and tried to push himself up from the ground with his hand on the wall. However, when he half knelt on one knee and propped his upper body up, his vision turned black. He felt dizzy and his back was instantly covered in cold sweat. Lisa reached out to touch his forehead and was shocked to find that he had a fever. Beads of cold sweat the size of beans on his forehead and flowed down. Mui Chen opened his eyes. His face was ghastly pale without a trace of blood. Lisa knelt on one knee on the ground and gently wiped away the cold sweat on his face. She had already guessed that the wounds on his body must have been infected. Coupled with the exhaustion of his physical strength throughout the night, this led to the fever. However, she didn't have any more medicine on her. Is it serious? She knitted her brows and asked with concern. Yu had already told her to protect him, so at this moment, it was her duty to protect him. Mui Chen bit his lips and shook his head. It's fine. As he spoke, another bean-sized bead of cold sweat rolled down his face. No matter how strong he was, his body could not deceive her eyes. Chapter 1245. When he opened his eyes again, Mui Chen felt that the dizziness had subsided a little. He thought that his physical strength had reached its limit. He became more anxious. There was a deep sense of helplessness. How good would it be if he was a Superman? However, he was not. At that moment, he was extremely frustrated with himself for being powerless. He could not even protect his younger brother. He was so angry at himself that he could not help but punch the ground. His knuckles were bleeding. What are you doing? Lisa held his fist tightly. This idiot. Did he think that his injuries were not serious enough? Mui Chen reached out to wipe the cold sweat off his face. He struggled to stand up. His body swayed, and his vision turned black again. His body fell forward heavily. Lisa immediately went forward and supported his center of gravity. As soon as she touched his skin, she felt a chill that seeped into her heart. The temperature of his skin was frighteningly cold. It was as if it could penetrate her clothes and freeze her blood. His clothes were all wet. Some of it was blood, while others were wet from the dew as they passed through the forest. Along the way, he had been trying to be brave. He endured his exhaustion and forced himself to walk so far. At that moment, he no longer had any energy left. Despite his physical condition, he still insisted on carrying Yu. His willpower was extraordinarily tenacious. Lisa carried him on her back. Mui Chen was half a head taller than Yu. Hence, he was heavier than Yu. Lisa did not have much energy left. If it was in her usual state, Mui Chen's weight was nothing. However, at that moment, her body swayed and she almost collapsed. Mui Chen's head rested weakly on her shoulder. His rapid breathing blew into her ears. She could still feel his strong and rapid heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. It was scorching hot. She supported him with all her strength and stepped on the road again. On the mountain road, the wind was biting cold. She was drenched in sweat, and when the wind blew, she felt both wet and cold. Mui Chen's mind was in a mess. When he opened his eyes in a daze, he felt that he was being carried on someone's back. He looked down and saw Lisa's determined face. The cold wind brushed past her hair. Her messy hair intertwined with her thick and long eyelashes. Observing the side of her face from a close distance, he discovered that this girl had a face that could make people think she was a celestial being. She had a special temperament. She clearly looked so cold and arrogant, as if there was not a trace of smoke or fire on her body. The blood flowing in her body had long condensed into snow, and her bones had been cast into ice. However, one could not help but feel sorry for her. She clearly looked very unapproachable, distant, cold, and unapproachable. However, he couldn't help but feel a sense of closeness. After a long night of trekking, Lisa gradually felt that her head was heavy and her feet were light. She was not really a war machine. She was made of flesh and blood. Even living people had their limits. Hence, she could not help but slow down. Mui Chen said weakly, Put me down. I can walk on my own." "Shut up." "Be quiet." Lisa spat out a few words with difficulty. She was already distraught. Her legs were as heavy as lead. It was so heavy that she found it difficult to lift a step. Chapter 1246. His head felt heavy and muddled, and the scene in front of him started to drift away. Finally, she could not bear the burden anymore. Her world suddenly turned dark. Just as she was about to collapse, she vaguely saw a troop rushing toward her from the edge of her blurry vision. Lisa squinted her eyes slightly and shook her head hard, trying to get rid of the confusion in her head. Only then did she get a clearer view. Leading the way was Vermilion Bird, who was fully armed. Walking beside her was Xianxia. As if a stream of energy had been injected into her body, She pulled herself together and walked toward Vermilion Bird with Mui Chen on her back. Vermilion Bird saw a girl carrying a child toward her at the end of the mountain road. Squinting her eyes and recognizing that the child was Lisa, she raised her hand. "It's Lisa. Luca, send someone to get her." "Yes." Luca immediately led his team and rushed over. Lisa tried her best to hold on until the last moment when Luca reached her. When his teammate picked up Xiaoyi Chen, her body swayed and she collapsed to the ground. "Lisa." Luca squatted down in shock and carried Lisa. She opened her mouth and her eyelids fluttered a few times. Before she could say a word, she fainted. She had been holding on for so long. She was beyond her limit. Luca anxiously called out a few times. Lisa was already unconscious. When Vermilion Bird arrived, she only saw two people. "Where's Tianyu?" Luca shook his head in silence. There were only two children and one child missing. She frowned and put on her headset. "Command Center. This is Vermilion Bird. Please send Tianyu's location." "Yes." The temporary command center immediately sent the location information to her laptop. In fact, she had originally planned to meet at the bridge, but when the person did not show up, she requested the command center to send Tianyu's location. In the end, the reply she got was that the location signal was sometimes strong and sometimes weak. There was no signal coverage in the forest, so the location was not accurate. After Zhu Ke lost contact with Lisa, she sent people into the forest to search for her. Tianyu's signal frequency, however, was abnormal. By the time he arrived, his signal was already several miles away. This meant that he was heading north. Therefore, the Vermilion Bird sent people to the rendezvous point, not leaving even an inch. In the end, this was the result that he had been waiting for. When Vermilion Bird's troops arrived at the last location, they found a trap that was more than 5 meters deep. When she turned on the flashlight and shone it inside, there was no one. She only found a blood-stained coat. The centaur fished out the coat. Vermilion Bird looked at it, her face slightly sullen. "What's going on?" Gong Jie's voice came from the headset. "Where is Tianyu?" Vermilion Bird buckled her headset and replied, "He's gone. Please send the location again. The location signal has been cut off." "Interrupted?" Vermilion Bird was slightly surprised. "How is that possible?" Luca said in a low voice, "The chip implanted in his body is made of material that can be absorbed by the human body. If the time limit is exceeded, the chip will be absorbed by the human body." Vermilion Bird frowned and clenched her fists tightly. She turned around and coldly ordered, "Send more people to search for him. He's not far from here. Do a carpet search." "Yes." Chapter 1247. In the hospital, Mu Yaja received a call from Li Hanlin. According to his report, Mu Yichen had returned safely. Tianyu's whereabouts were unknown, so they had sent more people to search for him. Mu Yaja was shocked. "What happened? Because we have lost contact with the two children, we don't know what exactly happened. We'll know the details when the little master wakes up." "Chairman Mu, I'm sorry." Mu Yaja hung up the phone and turned to meet Yun Shershur's expectant and inquiring gaze. "Are the children back?" "Yes." Mu Yaja nodded and furrowed his brows. He decided to hide this matter from her for the time being. "They're back safely. Don't worry." "They're back? Where are they?" Yun Shershur's face finally regained its color. Her eyes lit up as she excitedly tried to get off the bed. Mu Yaja stopped her. "I'll bring you there when you're feeling better." "No." Yun Shershur's face froze for a moment before she asked suspiciously, "Mu Yaja, are you lying to me just to comfort me? Actually, the children aren't back safely, right?" She was a little suspicious and stared at him suspiciously. Mu Yaja said, "Be good. I'm not lying to you. The two children were injured and were sent to the hospital. If you want to see them, look at how haggard you are now. My heart will ache if they see you like this." Yun Shershur was startled. She lowered her head to take a look. Indeed, she looked a little haggard now. "Have some porridge first and rest for a while. I'll bring you there when you look better, okay?" Mu Yaja gently coaxed her. Yun Shershur looked at him suspiciously for a while. She did not see any trace of deceit on his face before she returned to bed unhappily. "I don't feel at ease until I see the children. Have some porridge first, okay?" Wuxia picked up the bowl of porridge at the side and looked at her tenderly. Ever since he rushed back to the country, he had been accompanying her for 2 days and 2 nights without sleep. As a result, there was some stubble on his chin. His originally handsome face had become thinner and more chiseled. Xianxia looked at him deeply and suddenly felt a stabbing pain in her heart. She suddenly felt that she was a little too willful. She could not sleep well due to worry. He, too, could not close his eyes. She was a mother, and he was also a father. How could he not be worried? She was worried and scared, but she could rely on him. As for him, but she had no one to talk to. He must be more tired. Tears welled up in her eyes all of a sudden. Wuxia opened the thermos flask and picked up the porridge. When he turned to look at her, he saw her guilty expression and frowned slightly. "What's wrong?" "Wuxia, I've made you worry," Xianxia muttered weakly. She looked up and stared at him. "From now on, I'll listen to you and not let my thoughts run wild." Wuxia was slightly stunned. He could not help but reach out his finger and gently scratch her nose. "Silly." He picked up the spoon and said gently, "I'll feed you, okay?" "Okay." Xianxia nodded. The porridge was sent over by the servant earlier. It was in the thermos flask and was still a little hot. Chapter 1248. Xianxia took a small bite and swallowed it. Instantly, she felt warm all over her body. Her body did not feel so cold anymore. Wuxia repeated the action until he fed her half a bowl of porridge. Xianxia said, "I'm full. I can't drink any more." "Drink a little more," he coaxed patiently. She could not bear with him and drank a few more mouthfuls. She had a small appetite. After she was full, she lay down gently. Wuxia stood up and walked to the bathroom. After washing up, he walked to the bed. "I'm going to the office to settle something. Have a good rest and wait for me to come back." "You're going to the office?" Xianxia was a little dissatisfied. "Is there something important?" "Yes, it's very important. There were some debts that he had to settle with that person." Xianxia asked, "When are you coming back?" "I'll come back when I'm done." Xianxia pouted. That was as good as not saying anything. However, she did not say anything. She lay down on the bed obediently and smiled. "I'll wait for you." "Okay." Wuxia folded the bedding for her and turned to leave. A wave of darkness that could topple mountains and overturn seas swept towards him. Immediately after, he fainted. In his groggy state, he felt an inexplicable heat. It was so hot that his whole body was burning. His chest felt as though it was being burned by something, and it was swollen and painful. Yu woke up from his muddled state. He was a little confused about where he was. The headache was getting clearer. The pain was clear and intense. Somehow, his weak consciousness told him that he was still alive. After a long period of darkness, when he opened his eyes again, it was because he felt a tender little hand running amok on his face. When he woke up, he opened his eyelids and saw a small wheat-colored hand gently stroking his eyelashes. "Wah! Pa, this little brother's eyelashes are so beautiful. They're so long, just like a beautiful fan." A tender and soft voice sounded. Yu frowned slightly. She tried to open her eyelids, but her vision was still blurry. "Lingling, little brother is injured. Move aside and don't disturb his rest." "But father, Lingling didn't disturb little brother's rest." Father, why is little brother's skin so white? He looks like a child from the city. Also, little brother is very handsome. Even more handsome than that Huzi in the village." Yu's heart tightened, and his eyes widened in an instant. He turned his head abruptly and met the eyes of a little girl, who was looking at him with surprise. The girl was startled at first, then she leaned over and cupped his face to take a look. Yu's eyes widened in shock. Seeing that he had woken up, a look of joy appeared on the little girl's face. "Father, little brother is awake. Little brother is awake." The little girl waved her hands happily and ran away. Yu suddenly sat up on the bed. However, his movement was too big, and it affected the wound on his arm. He sucked in a breath of cold air and gently covered his arm with his trembling hand. He turned his head and looked around. What entered his eyes was a slightly backward civilian hut. Chapter 1249. The floor was paved with green stone slabs. He was lying on a 4-poster wooden bed. Where was this place? He remembered that he had fallen into a trap. After he fainted, he didn't know what had happened. When he woke up, why was he in a villager's house? Yu lowered his head and looked at himself. He had changed into a new set of clothes. He didn't know where the clothes came from, but they looked a little rustic. They had been washed too many times and were a size too big. His wounds had been cleaned in time, replaced with gauze, and bandaged properly. Not long after, along with the sound of hurried footsteps, an adult man led the noisy little girl to the bedside. Seeing that she had finally woken up, his face was filled with relief, but at the same time, a trace of guilt appeared. "Little boy, you're awake. It's good that you're awake. It's good that you're awake." Yu was instantly on guard as he sized up the man in front of him. The man was slightly older. He had dark skin and a sturdy physique. He was wearing the same clothes that had been washed too many times, and his beard was unshaven. It was obvious that he didn't take care of himself and looked a little sloppy. However, his face was calm and honest, and his entire body emitted a simple and unadorned aura. As soon as he opened his mouth, his voice was thick and hoarse. It seemed that he must be a veteran smoker. He sat by the bedside. Yu sensed the deep kindness in his eyes and let down his guard. It was probably this man who had rescued him from the trap. It was also this man who had helped him bandage his wounds and change his clothes. It seemed that this man didn't have any ill intentions. Hence, he didn't have to be wary of him. "Who are you?" Yu smiled and asked. The man smiled, then hugged the little girl, and told him the story. "When I went to retrieve the trap today, I found that you had fallen into it, so I rescued you. I saw that you were injured, so I brought you back first. I saw that you were covered in blood and were seriously injured." The man's calm and hoarse voice had a strong local accent. From his long-winded narration, Xianxia learned that there was a remote farm near this mountain path. The man before him was a farmer living there. He usually farmed a dozen or so mu of land and occasionally went hunting in the mountains. And the trap that he fell into was set up by him. He originally hoped to catch some wild wolves and deer, but he didn't expect that he would step on it and fall down. It was no wonder that when he woke up, this man walked over and showed such an ashamed expression to him. It was said that the farm here was called Anyang Village, a typical village in the city. Speaking of which, the villagers of Anyang Village could be considered as old natives of the capital. Because the place was remote, surrounded by mountains and rivers, far from the city center, the city government did not develop it. The main reason was that there wasn't much value in developing such a location. There were a few hundred villagers in Anyang Village. Most of them used to farm for a living. Although they weren't rich, they lived a peaceful life. A few years ago, a farmer had the whimsical idea of opening up a forest and planting fruit trees. Unexpectedly, the harvest that year was good, so the villagers of Anyang Village started planting fruit trees one after another. When this man brought him back, it was said that it caused a stir in the village. Chapter 1250. Secondly, when the man brought him back, he was covered in blood, which attracted the attention of many villagers. Some of them felt sorry for him, so they sent him some old clothes. "Little boy, why did you go to that forest? It's dangerous there. There are a lot of wild animals there. Where are you from? How did you end up here?" The man fired a barrage of questions at him like a machine gun. He looked young, but he did not look like a country bumpkin. His clothes were expensive, and his skin was fair and tender. He was a typical child who grew up in the city. His daughter was envious. Girls love to look good, but growing up in the countryside, his skin was tanned and rough. Seeing Yu's handsome face and fair skin, she was envious. While he was unconscious, she tirelessly leaned on the bed and sized him up. She would pick up his hand and look at it, and then she would fiddle with his eyelashes. She would never get tired of playing with them. The little girl yearned for life in the city. There were always idol dramas on TV. Her dream was to get into a city university when she grew up and live in the city. The little girl fell in love with Yu at first sight. Although she was still young and had not reached the age of first awakening of love, she actually knew how to be shy when she looked at Yu. Yu felt that this family was quite warm-hearted and friendly to him. They were simple and honest, and did not seem to harbor any ill intentions toward him. Moreover, his wounds were cleaned, so he still had a good impression of the man in front of him. However, when the man asked about his identity, he did not say much and only said that he lived in the city. The man asked for his parents' numbers so that he could call them and send him home. Yu Yu gave him Li Hanlin's number. The man then left the little girl at home to look after him while he went to the village to make a call. This village was very remote, so the communication system was very outdated. Not every family had such an advanced and luxurious thing like a mobile phone, nor did they have a landline. Many people would go to a small store in the village to make a call. There was a public phone there, and it was called E-Department's PHS. 1 yuan could make a call for a few minutes. It was quite worth it. When the villagers of Anyang village needed to make a call, they would go to the convenience store to make the call. Anyang village was very far away from the nearby villages and towns. Fortunately, living in this village, they did not have to worry about food and clothing. Therefore, the villagers here rarely left the village. The little girl's name was Lingling, and her full name was Zhao Linghua. She was 6 years old this year and was attending a private primary school in the village. That was what Lingling had told him. Seeing that Yu Yu had woken up, Lingling immediately started chattering non-stop. Yu Yu didn't have the energy to respond to her. He just leaned on the bed quietly and waited for the man to finish the call. After contacting Li Hanlin, he waited for Li Hanlin to come and pick him up. Yu Yu's indifference did not dampen the little girl's enthusiasm. She talked to herself and did not feel lonely. Instead, she was very happy. This was understandable. Lingling had grown up in this village, and it was rare for her to see a child from the city. Naturally, she was filled with curiosity. Little brother, is the moon in the city big and round? Chapter 1251. I saw on TV that there are many tall buildings in the city. They're very, very tall. They're so tall. Won't the wind blow them down? Where's your house, big brother? Do you have immortal taro pancakes at home? My mother knows how to make immortal taro pancakes. They're delicious. They're made with taro. They're sweet and crunchy. She became more and more excited as she spoke. She jumped off the bed and ran out of the door. No one knew what she was going to do. Not long after, she skipped into the room with a plate in her hands. There were a few golden taro pancakes on the plate. She handed the plate to him, raised her thick eyebrows slightly, and said with a smile, "These are my mother's immortal taro pancakes. They're very delicious. They're freshly made. Do you want to try them?" As she spoke, she took a piece and put it in her mouth. She took a big bite and began to chew. It was crunchy. Looking at her eating, it tasted exceptionally good. Yu Yu hesitated for a moment, but he was simply too hungry. He had not eaten or drunk anything for 2 days, so his stomach was rumbling with hunger. Hence, he could not care less as he picked up a piece and bit into it. Hiss! It was so sweet. It was so sweet that it stuck to his teeth. Yu Yu bit off a piece and chewed. Lingling was elated when she saw that he had eaten it. She asked proudly, "Is it good? Is it good?" "Yes." Yu Yu nodded politely. Although it was not his favorite flavor, he felt that it was quite tasty now that he was hungry. Lingling sat by his bed and ate a piece of taro pancake each. She chattered incessantly as she nibbled on the immortal taro pancake. Yu Yu would respond politely from time to time. "Do you watch TV? We have a TV at home. My father bought it in town last year." Lingling got off the bed and turned on the TV. Yu Yu's lips twitched when he saw it. She must have bought this second-hand TV, right? It was black and white and only about 10 inches long. When she turned it on, snowflakes fluttered in the air. This type of TV had been phased out more than 10 years ago. However, in Anyang village, it was already considered very fashionable to have such a television. There were only a few channels on the TV. At this moment, there was only the afternoon news, but Lingling was also watching it with relish. For her, as long as there were people moving in the screen, she would find it very interesting. Not long after, the man hurried back, but he brought some bad news. As it turned out, when he rushed over, the store was actually closed. After asking around, it turned out that the store owner had gone to town to stock up on goods. Now, it was a distance of 30 miles to town. Adding on the fact that he had to stock up on goods, he would probably only be back tomorrow. Therefore, the man said that he would settle him down for the night first. When the boss of the snack bar came back tomorrow, he would call his family. Although Yu Yu was worried, there was nothing she could do. "Then I'll have to trouble you." Yu Yu thanked him politely. The man blushed in embarrassment. "Sigh. Don't say that. I'm embarrassed. Little brother, it's good that you can forgive me. If I hadn't dug that trap, you wouldn't have fallen into it. It turned out that the man was still feeling guilty about that. Yu comforted him. It's fine. It was fine as long as he was fine. Chapter 1252. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Yu felt cold sweat in his heart. It turned out that this man was still feeling guilty about this matter. When Lingling heard that Yu was going to stay tonight, she was so happy that she jumped 3 feet high. Yay! Daddy is so awesome. So awesome. I'm so happy that Big Brother is staying at our house tonight. She was overjoyed, and a smile bloomed on her face. Children always lacked playmates, and for a child of her age, having one more playmate was the greatest joy. Moreover, in Lingling's eyes, Yu was beautiful with fair skin and big eyes. Hence, she especially liked this handsome big brother. Yu frowned slightly and ignored Lingling. He asked, so in such a big village, only the convenience store has a phone that can contact the outside world? That's right. Little brother, I'm not going to lie to you. In our village, the traffic signal is rather backward. There's a big mountain outside and a big forest in the middle. That area is under the control of the government. Plus, our village is neither big nor small. It's vast but sparsely populated. There are only a few hundred villagers in total. That's why the signal tower couldn't be built. As for the phone in the convenience store, it's quite fashionable in our village. Even so, the signal is intermittent. Hee. The man laughed awkwardly. His face was red and he looked a little embarrassed. Although Yu was disappointed, he didn't complain. After all, this man was so nice to him. Besides, staying for one night was nothing. Hence he nodded and said, "Okay, I'll wait and see tomorrow." The man nodded and explained carefully, But I'm afraid that your parents will be worried about you. I'm also very anxious. But there's no other way. The village is not like the city. All the facilities are backward. It's okay. But I'll have to trouble you today." Yu smiled and thanked him gracefully. The man was a little flattered. He rubbed his hands together and looked a little nervous. He suddenly laughed dryly and asked, "Are you hungry?" "No, I just ate a few pieces of taro cake." "Do you want a few more?" The man was so enthusiastic that Yu couldn't handle it. "Do you want some water?" "Okay, thank you, uncle." Yu was famous for being a sweet talker. When the man heard that, he was overjoyed. Yu was not like those children in the village who were used to being wild since they were young. But he was only 7 years old. Yu was very polite. Yu's heart was sweeter than honey. From their conversation, Yu learned that the man's name was Xianxia and that he was an ordinary villager in the village. He owned a few acres of land behind his house and planted a few acres of wheat and vegetables. He knew how to hunt, so whenever he was free, he would hunt for game in the mountains. Occasionally, when he was lucky, he would hunt a few deer and sell their skins at the market. Usually, he would be able to fetch a good price and not have to worry about his monthly expenses. Yu's days were peaceful and comfortable. Zhao Xiangjuan's wife, Li Ru, was a typical farmer's wife. Her skin was dark and rough, and her voice was a little loud. However, she was warm and friendly. It was afternoon now. The sun outside was gradually getting hotter. Chapter 1253. Lingling pulled him along and proudly introduced Yu to a few of her friends in the village. They were all young children. The oldest was 12 years old and the youngest was 7 years old. They were all immature brats. Yu, who was secretly criticizing these children in his heart, did not realize that, in the eyes of others, he was also a brat who was still wet behind the ears. When the group of children saw that a new friend had arrived, they surrounded Yu and sized him up. "Lingling, who is this guy? My father brought him back. I heard that he came from the city." "From the city?" Hearing these words, all the children's eyes shone brightly. They crowded in front of Yu and asked him curiously. "The children in the city are just like what they show on TV. Their skin is white and tender." "Hey, what's your name?" The child who spoke was called Ergo. "His name is Yu. You can call him Yu." Zhao Linghua introduced him enthusiastically. "Yu. Wah. That's a nice name. It sounds so Western. It's not as old-fashioned as my name." You're so good-looking. You look like a white porcelain doll. I heard from my father that the children in the city are all little princesses and young masters. Are you a young master too? Yu's lips twitched for a while. Zhao Linghua gently tugged at Yu's sleeve. Because she was shy, her face was red. She lowered her head slightly and said expectantly, "Little brother, do you want to play with us?" Lingling. Li Ru pretended to be angry and said, "Little brother is injured. How can he play with you? Don't mess around. Also, have you finished the homework that the teacher gave you? You only know how to play and don't do your homework. How are you going to get into the city's schools when you grow up?" Ling made a face. "Mom, I've finished my homework. That's why I came out to play." She stuck out her tongue and turned around. Then she grabbed Yu's hand and ran out of the house. Li Ru stomped her feet in anger. In front of the door, there was a large open space. On the ground, there was a crooked drawing of a lattice with chalk. A little boy in dirty clothes was half squatting on the ground, fiddling with a small piece of tile. His pair of clear black and white eyes were fully focused in front of him. Lingling introduced the little boy as her older brother, Zhao Tianyu. The little guy was very young, no more than 7 years old, but his appearance was very delicate. His pair of phoenix eyes were especially beautiful, his white and flawless skin, and his delicate facial features were completely different from the appearance of the Zhao couple. At that time, the gossip in the village said that the Zhao couple could not have children, and this child was adopted by the Zhao couple at a high price. Usually, they worshipped him like a little ancestor. In the village, there was a saying that raising a child would help one prepare for one's old age. It was also said that there were 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no children was the worst. Therefore, the couple insisted on having a boy. Their family was also well off, so under the doting, the little guy's food and clothing were considered good among the children in the village. Later on, Zhao Linghua was born. His name was Zhao Tianyu, and his nickname was Daodu. He grew up wearing the same pants as Zhao Linghua and always played behind her. His favorite game was hopscotch. Chapter 1254. Therefore, he was not interested in the game at all. He sat at the door like an old man. The boy in front of her was full of childish nature. Even though he could not run steadily, he was very playful. He pulled Zhao Linghua and cried, pestering her to play with him. "Lingling, I'll jump first. Watch me. This time, I won't go back on my word." Lil P smiled at her, revealing a row of white teeth. Lingling said a number weakly. 8. Lil P made a sound of agreement and threw the ball with all her might. She then jumped around excitedly in the grid. Yu sat at the door, resting his chin on one hand as he lazily basked in the sun. Lingling kept asking him to play with her, but Yu was not very interested in this. His indifference made Lingling feel a little disappointed, so she played with Lil P listlessly. Not long after, the other children came running over one after another. The group of children started to make a ruckus. It was the sound of children arguing, quarreling, and laughing. It sounded carefree, clear, and loud. It was like a free bird, chirping non-stop, as if it didn't know exhaustion. Yu looked at the children who were making a ruckus and suddenly sighed. What a group of energetic children. Not long after, the Zhao family's door was filled with people. It turned out that the villagers had come over out of curiosity to see what was going on. They had heard that Zhao Xianxia had come back from hunting in the mountains and rescued a child. When he brought the child back, he was covered in blood, scaring everyone. They did not know where the child came from and why he ran into the mountains for no reason. The mountains were so big, so they thought that the child's parents were heartless and abandoned the child. Speaking of which, among the villagers of Anyang village, many of the parents in the city were too heartless. There were a few times when human traffickers brought children from the city and lied to the honest and kind villagers that the children were abandoned by the people in the city. Most of the villagers were kind, and some of them did not have children, so they spent a lot of money to adopt the children. But in reality, they were all trafficked by human traffickers. It was just that these villagers rarely interacted with the outside world and were all natives. Therefore, word spread like wildfire. The villagers' impression of the people in the city was that they were rich and respectable. There was also no lack of heartless parents who didn't even want their own children and casually threw them away. Therefore, some people thought that Yu's parents abandoned her, so they asked, "Yu, do your parents abandon you? Is that why he threw you up the mountain? No, Yu answered honestly, but did not say anything else. But when those people saw that it was a child, they teased him and pretended to be serious as they said, "You have been deceived. My parents definitely don't want you anymore. That's why I lost you. Do you want to come to my house and be my son?" Yu's face instantly darkened. She said word by word, "No." The woman's face stiffened. In fact, she really thought that Yu had been abandoned by a heartless couple in the city. Didn't she hear that the city was implementing family planning? So, she thought that they abandoned her and threw her into the mountains. Looking at Yu's handsome face, she was tempted. Chapter 1255. In this village, it was inevitable that people would gossip about her if she did not have a son. If she did not have a son, people would say that she had no descendants. Her husband and mother-in-law, on the other hand, would point at her and scold her for being a disappointment. Hence, she had been thinking of adopting a boy and letting him take care of them when they were old. "You can be my son. I'll take care of you and treat you well, okay? Come with Auntie." The woman felt embarrassed and tried to coax her again. Yu refused. "No." Lingling spread her arms in front of Yu and said, "Auntie Feng, even if Yu was abandoned by his parents, he'll stay at my house. He won't go to your house." Everyone laughed. A more sensible child said, "Auntie Feng, Yu is timid. Don't scare him." He then turned to Yu and Lingling. "Auntie Feng is just joking with you. Hee. Yu was annoyed. He did not like it when the elders teased him like this. He was smart, so he could tell that this auntie was joking with him. Ordinary children would not be able to tell and would be scared to tears. Lingling quickly chased after him when she saw him get up and leave. "Little brother, where are you going?" "I'm just walking around. Don't follow me." No, I'll walk with you, okay?" "Okay." Dishing Financial Group. The share transfer ceremony was supposed to take place at around 10 in the morning. However, due to Mu Linfeng's repeated delays, the meeting was delayed until the afternoon. In the CEO's office, Mu Yaxia sat at the table, fiddling with a Zippo lighter in his hand. Beside him, Mu Linfeng sat on the sofa silently. Other than Mu Lianjue, all the major shareholders of Dishing Financial Group were present. The board of directors of Dishing Financial Group was mostly made up of internal members of the Mu family. Other than Mu Yaxia, who held the most shares, Mu Linfeng and Mu Shumin were the second and third shareholders. Mu Shumin was Mu Sheng's first wife's daughter. According to seniority, Mu Yaxia had to address her as Little Aunt. Due to her secret identity, Mu Shumin had a rather conspicuous position in the political world. Therefore, she had never participated in the board meetings of Disheng Financial Group, no matter how big or small. However, it was different this time. There was actually news that her nephew was transferring his shares to Mu Lianjue. When she found out about this from Mu Linfeng, she was the first to disagree. Before Mu Yaxia arrived, Mu Linfeng had already briefed them on the matter. When they heard that Mu Yaxia was willing to give up his shares of Dishing Financial Group for a woman, everyone's eyes widened in shock. They were taken aback because, as bystanders, they knew very well that the man was only 27 years old. What exactly had he experienced in order to reach such a prominent position today? One must know that the Mu family's internal affairs were complicated and involved a lot of interests. Not counting the members of the main family, just the side branches of the Mu family alone had many outstanding people. To be able to reach such a level in such a big family was not as simple as shedding a layer of skin. To say that they fought until their heads bled was an understatement. Chapter 1256. It was not because of anything else but Mu Yaxia's capabilities. Despite his young age, he already had extraordinary capabilities. Moreover, he had the support of Mu Shang, the head of the family, and his second uncle, Mu Linfeng. That was why he could reach where he was today. It was like an emperor in ancient times who had conquered thousands of miles of land. But now, he had to give up his imperial power for a woman. How could they not be shocked? Ceding the shares to Mu Lianjue meant that there would be a change in the head of the Mu group from now on. This was quite a big change for the board of directors. The change of Dishing's CEO was closely related to the board's interests. A few years ago, when Mu Yaxia took over Dishing from Mu Sheng's hands, everyone was skeptical of him. At that time, Mu Yaxia was only in his early 20s. Everyone was against handing over such a huge financial group to him. At that time, Dishing was facing a critical moment of life and death. As the CEO, he could decide the life and death of the Mu Group at any time. With a single thought, all the accumulated hegemony could be destroyed overnight. The board of directors urgently needed a wise monarch to lead the financial group in the right direction. Mu Yaxia had just taken office for a few days, and a few shareholders on the board of directors had made things difficult for him. They thought that he was inexperienced and could not perfectly help Dishing overcome its crisis. However, a year later, Mu Yaxia gave the board of directors a perfect answer. He proved to them that not only could he do it, but he could also do it well. Today, Dishing Financial Group's businesses covered the entire world. Shopping malls, resorts, real estate, entertainment, internet. Every branch of the company was much better than the other businesses in the same industry. Only then did the board of directors have nothing to say and truly acknowledge this young and promising CEO. In the past 5 years, the quarterly financial reports had increased by 100 times compared to 5 years ago. There was such a rumor circulating within Dishing Financial Group. As long as one owned even 1% of Dishing Financial Group shares, one would not have to worry about food or clothing for the rest of one's life and enjoy endless glory and wealth. As for Mu Yaxia's Dishing Financial Group, as long as he owned 0.001% of the company's shares, the annual dividends would be equivalent to the profits of an industrial company for an entire year. It could be said that Mu Yaxia would not be left with nothing after leaving Dishing. After so many years, the connections he had accumulated during his reign, coupled with his own abilities, were more than enough to create an empire that truly belonged to him. As for Di Shang, if he left him, he would probably go back to how he was a few years ago. The country's economy would also undergo great changes. In the foreseeable future, the economy would decline, industries would decline, and the stock market would shake. As the saying goes, a country cannot be without a ruler for a day. A country cannot leave its unified, correct, and effective management. Relatively speaking, this theory was very useful in a family business. Similarly, Dishing Financial Group could not afford to lose a wise leader. "You brat. Don't tell me you're really going to cede your shares to that old thing?" Mu Linfeng slammed the table in a thunderous rage. Mu Yaxia sneered inwardly. It seemed that this second uncle of his was going to bring the board of directors to denounce him. Chapter 1257. He had put in a lot of effort into making the Mu Group what it was today. Since Dishing Financial Group had developed to this point, he had not been able to get to where he was without his help. Back then, he was young and full of talent. However, having the ability did not mean that he had the opportunity to show off his skills. After all, it was very difficult for him to gain the approval of the board of directors when he was only in his early 20s without the accumulation of connections. Back then, it was also his second uncle who supported him against everyone's objections. His original intention was to hand over the Mu Group to him so that it could reach a higher level. Mu Yaxia did not disappoint him. He did it. However, now, he was actually willing to give up the Mu Group's great foundation for a woman. What Mu Linfeng did not want to admit was that even if Mu Yaxia left the Mu Group, he would still become the cream of the crop and the cream of the crop. However, if he left the Mu Group, it would only sink rapidly and would no longer be the overlord who could summon the wind and rain. Mu Linfeng's worries were not unfounded. As early as 2 years ago, Mu Yaxia had started to cultivate his own power outside. He knew very well that no matter how big the Dishing Financial Group was, it could not be bigger than the sky. No matter how deep the foundation was, it could not be deeper than the ground. Since ancient times, there had never been a family that could run rampant for hundreds of years. Everything had always started from nothing and then from something to nothing. Yin and yang alternated, and the cycle repeated itself. No matter how small a grain of sand was, it could still accumulate from small to large. No matter how big a foundation was, it could still collapse. Moreover, the Mu Group was a family-run business. The capital and shares were mainly controlled by a member of the Mu family. He was already sick of it. Every time he made a decision, there would always be a few small figures from the family who would jump out to protest. He was also sick of being suppressed by the elders and being ordered around. He was Mu Yaxia. There was no saying that he could not live without the Mu family. Since he could push the Mu Group to the top 6 years ago, he could also build his own empire within 6 years. Moreover, he was such a proud man. Once he grasped the opportunity, he would build the world that belonged to him. In fact, in the past few years, he had been secretly diverting people from his businesses. In the past few years, He had gathered people to form an elite group.
If he left the Mu group, other than a large group of elites leaving with him, he would also take a group of talents that he had cultivated with him.
Other than that, he would also ruthlessly cut off a large piece of Di Sheng's flesh. After all, that was what he deserved. The Mu family was such a big family. They had outstanding talents, but they also had lazy good-for-nothings. These people were like locusts, gnawing at the monument that he had condensed with all his hard work until it was full of holes. He had already deeply experienced the drawbacks of family-run enterprises. The internal structure of the Mu group was gradually decaying. He did not want his hard work to be dragged down by these locusts. He, Mu Yaja, would never allow anyone to be above him. Be it Mu Sheng or Mu Lianjue. It was still Mu Linfeng. Good. He was so proud. How could he tolerate these people becoming his fetters? As for the kindness that Mu Linfeng had shown him, he was grateful. However, after working hard for him for so many years, it should be enough to repay him, right? Chapter 1258. Mu Shumin paused for a moment before asking sternly, "Have you ever thought about whether it's worth it for you to do this?" "Is it worth it for a woman?" Mu Yaja raised his head and looked at her coldly. "Why isn't it worth it?" "It's worth it." "Worth it?" Mu Shumin coldly snorted, but disapprovingly. "Hee. I'd like to see for myself who this woman is to make my nephew, who has always been indifferent to women, fall so deeply in love with her." "Yaja, don't be silly. You'll really regret it if you give up the Mu group's foundation for a dirty woman." Mu Yaja's lips curled up slightly, clearly disagreeing with her words. In fact, Xianxia was already under his protection. The two children had already escaped from Mu Lianjue's captivity, but Yu Yu's whereabouts were still unknown. Although she was not in Mu Lianjue's hands, he could very well cancel this matter and not transfer the shares to him. However, he was worried that the latter would fly into a rage out of humiliation and secretly send someone to kill Yu Yu. If that happened, the loss would outweigh the gain. If a mere Mu group could be used to exchange for Yun Tianyou's safety, then this deal was worth it. Of course, Mu Linfeng would not let this matter rest. "Auntie, do you think that I don't know what I'm doing? I, Mu Yaja, am not someone who can't live without anyone. No matter what, you can't transfer the shares in your hands to someone else. You should know how important you are to Dishing and what kind of position you have in the company." Mu Yaja stood up abruptly. His slender figure was tall and straight, and his aura was domineering. He slowly leaned against the table with his hands in his trouser pockets and lazily declared, "Auntie, I hope that you'll understand one thing. Dishing can be mine. However, I will never belong to Dishing." Mu Shumin was infuriated, but he suppressed his anger and tried his best to calm down as he negotiated with him. "Yaja, I know that you are capable and charismatic. But at the same time, you should also be responsible, right?" Mu Yaja remained expressionless and did not speak. Mu Shumin became even more anxious. However, due to her status, she had to maintain a certain attitude. Thus, she maintained a reserved demeanor from beginning to end. Mu Linfeng slammed the table and stood up. "Give up. I will never let you play with our hard work like this. There is only one CEO in Mu Group, and it can only be you. Yaja, listen to me. I've been through this before. When I was young, I was as impulsive as you. But second uncle knows your ambition and your courage. However, things like women will only become your fetters. You shouldn't be so impulsive because of a woman." "Women? Something like that?" Mu Yaja furrowed his brows all of a sudden. His gaze was as cold as an iceberg crashing into it. Chapter 1259. Mu Linfeng ignored his expression and said coldly, "I understand. You're not young anymore, and it's time for you to start a family. However, you should be clear about your status. You can have women, but they can't be those indecent ones. I'll find a few more women for you another day. No matter what kind of women they are, as long as you want them, with your status, which woman won't want to throw herself at you? Why are you so stubborn? Don't tell me that it has to be her." Mu Yaja's lips curled into a playful smile. His handsome brows raised slightly, and his eyes were filled with devilish charm. "I have to have her. What can you say?" "No." Mu Shumin suddenly stood up and said agitatedly, "No matter what, that woman can't be." "Why can't she be?" Mu Yaja retorted. He wanted to hear what Mu Xiumin would say in front of so many people. Mu Xiumin snorted and looked around.
Before he could say anything, he put on the airs of an elder and a superior and raised his head high.
Apart from a few important figures of the Mu family, Mu Xiumin, Mu Linfeng and his wife, Li Lijun, and Mu Yanqing and his wife, Ronglan Lin, were all present. The remaining members of the Mu family were the fans of these people. At most, they were here to show their support. If they were asked to speak, they would not dare to do so at all. In front of Mu Yaxia, they would not dare to act rashly no matter what. However, just Mu Xiumin and Mu Linfeng alone were more difficult to deal with. Their seniority was much higher than his. Back then, Mu Shang had been looking forward to Mu Wanru marrying into the family. Mu Xiumin and Mu Linfeng stood on the same side and were against it. The main reason why Mu Wanru could not marry him was because of their repeated opposition. Speaking of which, these two people had a lot of power, and they were currently the two biggest obstacles in front of him. He admitted that Mu Linfeng had indeed promoted and helped him. He had even saved him from dire straits.
Back then, as the legitimate grandson of the main wife, he had outstanding ability and was the most likely candidate for the successor.
Thus, after his parents passed away one after another, he was all alone in the Mu family and treaded on thin ice. It was Mu Linfeng who took him away and gave him a superior environment to grow up in. For this, he was grateful. He was a sentimental person. At the same time, he was also a person who knew how to be grateful. It was precisely because of this that he did not do so even though he had so many opportunities to transfer Mu Group's assets to his own name. However, as time passed, he gradually realized that Mu Linfeng's care and support for him wasn't pure. There seemed to be a motive behind it, and it was as if he was using him. He was very unhappy about this. Although he did not show it, in the past few years, he gradually rebelled against Mu Linfeng's orders and no longer obeyed him. Mu Linfeng must be wary of this and was secretly dividing the board of directors. Those little tricks could not be hidden from him at all. Mu Xiumin, on the other hand, was completely using him. In fact, she could not wait for Mu Yaxia to abdicate his position. If he transferred his shares to her, she would have nothing to say. Chapter 1260. Mu Xiumin's original intention was for Mu Yaxia to be the head of the family for a few years while secretly carving up the family's assets. When the time came, she would push Mu Yaxia out of his position and let her son take it. However, it was clearly not the right time for Mu Yaxia to give up his position. Her son was only in his teens and was still young. She would have to wait until he was at least in his 20s before she could find an opportunity to help him take the position. She was born from a concubine and did not have much status in the family. However, she had inherited her mother's beauty. She served in the military when she was young and married into a prestigious family when she was in her 20s. Her status in the Mu family instantly rose, and with her husband's prominent status, she had the right to speak in the family. In fact, Mu Lianjue's matter was not that simple. One must know that most of the people he had sent this time had military backgrounds. In the entire Mu family, Mu Linfeng had the deepest military background. In other words, he was fully capable of stopping Mu Lianjue. But he did not. Why? It was because he wanted to use Mu Lianjue to get rid of Xianxia and her son, ruthlessly kicking away these two stumbling blocks in front of Mu Yaxia. This way, he could secretly use Mu Lianjue to get rid of these two thorns in his flesh without having to make a move himself. He did not wish for Mu Yaxia to have any attachments or weaknesses in his heart. Mu Linfeng was afraid that a person like him would become irresolute and indecisive once he had any attachments or attachments. This would delay the Mu group's future because of a bit of affection for a girl. Mu Yaxia was not stupid. He could tell that his uncle had ulterior motives. Thus, he secretly made a decision on the spot. It seemed that there was no need to be merciful to these people anymore. He would not transfer his shares. However, he would not be merciful to them anymore, either. Mu Xiumin sized up his expression and suddenly sneered. Yaxia, it's not that I want to nag at you, but you can play with women, but you should also judge the situation and size up the situation. No matter what, you can't cross the line or go overboard. You should be clear of the Mu family's rules. Since when did you set your eyes on a woman with a dubious background in the entertainment industry? In my eyes, you've always been a child with good taste. Some women can't be touched. I know the entertainment industry well. Women who can make a name for themselves must be unrestrained behind the scenes. I've heard of Xianxia's name before. She's not a clean woman. Listen to Auntie's advice. Stay away from this kind of woman. Play with other women. Play.
Wuxia coldly tugged at the corner of his lips as his eyes turned frosty.
Auntie, you're mistaken about something. He was serious when it came to Xianxia. He was not just playing around with her. Mu Xiumin was surprised to hear that. What is it?
Speaking of which, I happen to have something to announce to the few elders.
Wuxia suddenly turned around and sat down on the sofa.
Facing the few important figures of the Mu family, he announced. Previously, the Mu group announced a media conference, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, it has been postponed again and again. After this is over, regardless of whether I'm the CEO of the Mu group or not, I will announce my marriage at this media conference.
Marriage announcement? Chapter 1261. Mu Xiumin widened her eyes in shock. Who are you planning to announce your marriage to? She suddenly guessed something.
Don't tell me it's that Xianxia?
Yes, I've decided to announce my marriage to her.
He crossed his legs elegantly, and his domineering aura swept through every corner of the office. Wuxia coldly swept his gaze across the room and said in a cold voice, I know this is a sudden announcement, so I'm informing all of you first.
No way. Mu Xiumin was the first to stand up and reject him, sizing him up in disbelief. Her face, however, was filled with unconcealable disappointment and heartache. She initially thought that her nephew was just toying with that woman, but even if it was just a game, she would not allow it. She did not expect him to say something so shocking, saying that he would announce his marriage to her at a media conference. This news was too shocking. That kind of woman will never be able to step into the Mu family's doorstep.
Xianxia, are you crazy?
If you marry that woman, what will the outside world think of us? I heard that she's the woman who was your surrogate 6 years ago. I also heard that she gave birth to 2 children back then, and in the past 6 years, she secretly hid one of them. This is clearly a conspiracy. To think that you're so smart, can't you see that she's planning to use her son as a bargaining chip to marry into the Mu family? She should take a look at her status and see if she's worthy of the title of the Mu family's young mistress. That kind of woman isn't even fit to carry my shoes. Mu Xiumin knitted her delicate brows. Her heavily made-up face was filled with disdain and contempt. She had always been prejudiced against women in the entertainment industry. She always felt that they were dirty and cheap, and that they would do anything to climb the social ladder. Therefore, in her eyes, Xianxia was the same. Mu Linfeng's face darkened as he expressionlessly said, Xianxia, second uncle should also think that you should start your own family at your age. However, I'm also opposed to this woman marrying into the family. Second uncle's attitude is clear. As long as I'm still alive, I won't allow her to take a step into the Mu family. His tone was firm and unyielding, leaving no room for rebuttal. Wuxia scanned the crowd's disapproving looks and sat up straight expressionlessly. His languid posture resembled that of an elegant emperor. His expression was leisurely and indifferent as he slowly parted his thin lips. Announcing my marriage to all of you is out of respect for all of you. I'm just informing the elders of the Mu family. It doesn't mean that you have the right to stop or interfere. Have the right to interfere. I'm your aunt. As your elder, don't I have the right to ask about your marriage? Chapter 1262. I dote on you, so I can't just watch you marry a slut. Can you understand Auntie's good intentions? Besides, this woman wants to use the child to blackmail you. Hee. Dream on. I'll put it this way. Mu Yichen's child will be acknowledged by the Muse. However, we won't acknowledge Yunxia's son. She can forget about bringing that little b*****rd into the Muse house. Little b*****rd? Wuxia narrowed his eyes dangerously. Mu Xiumin was startled. She was well aware that she had been too agitated. So much so that she had blurted out some words without thinking. She was extremely vexed for a moment. So she fiercely bit her red lips and stopped talking. Mu Linfeng glared at her angrily, too. She called Yun Tianyu a little b*****road. Was she not insulting the Mu family? No matter how useless Yun Tianyu was, the blood of the Mu family still flowed in his veins. Wuxia smiled and retorted coldly, What's wrong, auntie? I'm the one marrying her. It's not up to you to worry about my woman, is it? How is it not up to me to worry? Mu Xiumin's tone turned sharp when she saw the sarcasm in his words. Xianxia, oh Xianxia, I think you're getting more and more.
How dare you say such disgraceful words? Are you blind? You don't want a good woman, but you want a shady woman? You can afford to lose face, but the muse can't. It's fine if you don't do something stupid, but you implicate the rest of the family. They can't even raise their heads after you. Dixing CEO is actually marrying a showbiz actress as his wife. Just thinking about it makes me blush. As Mu Shumin spoke, she sneered and said, "Moreover, why don't you think about your current status? Yes, you're the strongest candidate for the Mu family's head, but I hope you're clear that you're just a candidate and have yet to ascend to the position of the family head. Don't lose your position because of a woman. The loss outweighs the gain." That's right, Xianxia. Don't let your emotions get the better of you. You're being too impulsive. Mu Xianxia raised his eyebrows slightly. Don't tell me that since I'm the head of the family, I have the final say in this marriage? We'll talk about it when you become the patriarch. Mu Shumin sneered coldly. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Mu Xiaxia's subtle movements. He clasped his hands together. His left index finger and thumb were rubbing something carefully. Mu Xiaxia opened his eyes, his aura intimidating. Mu Shumin suddenly widened his eyes and looked over. She suddenly noticed the ruby ring he wore on his right thumb. Inside the ruby ring is the Mu family's emblem. A dragon seal that pierced through the clouds and swallowed the heavens. That's the Mu family's family tattoo that has been passed down for generations. The possession of this ring means the possession of the Mu clan's supreme power. Only the head of the Mu Jia can have this ancient ring that has been passed down for hundreds of years. Mu Shumin's eyes suddenly widened. Mu Linfeng followed her astonished gaze and could not help but be shocked as well. When the crowd saw the ancient ring on his hand, their faces stiffened, and their eyes could not help but be filled with reverence. When did this happen? Mu Shumin could not even speak coherently. Mu Xiaxia did not even raise his eyebrows and remained silent. Chapter 1263. From today onwards, he would officially become the head of the Mu family. Mu Linfeng was also shocked speechless. Mu Xiaxia's lips curled into a mocking smile. As you can see, I'm now the head of the household and the most powerful person in the Mu family. I don't want to hear anyone say otherwise about who I'm marrying. Everyone fell into a strange silence. No one dared to speak. Although Mu Shumin could not suppress his anger, he did not know what to say. Mu Linfeng said gloomily, "Let me ask you again. Do you really want to marry that woman? Must you marry her?" "Second uncle, I've already made my stance clear. No matter how much you ask, it's useless." Mu Xiaxia raised his chin arrogantly. His attitude was arrogant and insufferably arrogant. "Second brother, pay attention to your words. Is this the attitude you should have when speaking to your second uncle? How can marriage be a trifling matter? I'm also considering this from your perspective. It's fine if you don't appreciate my kindness, but you're still acting so overbearing." Mu Yanqing spoke up from the side. Mu Xiaxia swept a cold glance over. His eyes were sharp and contained a sharp warning. "You have no right to criticize my decisions. Who are you to talk to me like that?" Mu Yanqing immediately shut his mouth. His face alternated between green and white in embarrassment. As a side branch, it was indeed inappropriate for him to butt in. Although he was only a year younger than Mu Xiaxia, there was a huge disparity in their status. He was jealous, but more than that, he was unconvinced. Mu Yanqing was also young and impetuous. In his heart, he was not much worse than Mu Xiaxia. He just lacked the opportunity and status. In terms of ability, he boasted that he was extraordinary. Therefore, when he was pressured by Mu Xiaxia, he felt indignant. What right did he have to be so arrogant and overbearing? Was it just because he was the head of the Mu family now? Did he think that he was so great because he was the head of the household? Just because he's the Mu Jia's patriarch, he can overestimate himself and challenge the authority of the Mu Jia's rules? What are you being so arrogant for? I wonder how long you'll be able to sit on the patriarch's seat. Mu Yanqing cursed fiercely in his heart. He was extremely unwilling, but he could only force a smile on his face. "Do you have any objections to this marriage?" Mu Xiaxia asked. Mu Shumin's face was full of anger as he said in a sarcastic tone, You're the patriarch now, so of course you have the final say. I just feel that your second uncle really made a mistake back then. Why did he support you? Now that you're in power, You're going to drag the entire clan down with you. Mu Yaja's cold gaze swept over and landed on Mu Shumin's body. The hidden sharpness in his gaze was enough to stab her. Mu Shumin was immediately enraged by his stare.
Why are you glaring at me?
You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you really think that you can do whatever you want just because you're the patriarch? No matter what, I'm still your aunt.
Don't be too self-righteous.
Humph. I hope that's the last time you say those words just now. Don't let me hear them again.
Are you threatening me?
Mu Shumin stood up agitatedly.
Shumin, stop talking. Just let him go.
He'll regret it sooner or later.
Mu Linfeng said angrily.
Chapter 1264. Sometimes, he lamented the fact that he had so many family members despite the size of the Mu family. The same blood flowed in their bodies as he did.
And yet, sometimes, these people might be your family, but they didn't seem like family at all. Everyone here seemed concerned on the surface, but in reality?
They couldn't wait to find a suitable opportunity to force him to abdicate. In a family where fame and fortune were the most important things, there was no need to talk about kinship. Since they didn't give him any face, it was ridiculous to expect him to care about kinship. Mu Yaja said coldly, "Second uncle, I've never regretted my decisions.
I thought you knew me well enough." Mu Linfeng scoffed.
He was clearly so angry that he could not speak. Mu Shumin said from the side, "Then what about the upcoming board meeting? Are you really going to transfer your shares to your fourth uncle? As long as second uncle promises me one thing, I'll cancel the shareholders' meeting."
"What is it?" Mu Yaja's voice deepened.
"Keep your subordinates in check. Since when can an outsider order the people in the capital military district around as he pleases?" Mu Linfeng's heart skipped a beat as he exchanged glances with his nephew. He understood that his nephew had seen through his intentions. Immediately, he sneered and nodded.
"Good. I promise you."
"Then I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Cancel the shareholders' meeting, and I'll leave fourth uncle's matter to you, second uncle. I don't want things to escalate to the point where I have to resort to my own means to deal with it."
Mu Yaja stood up and walked to the door. Suddenly, he stopped and turned around slowly.
"However, I still have something to warn you all." He turned around and swept his gaze across the crowd as he enunciated each and every word clearly. "If anyone dares to lay a finger on them under my nose, don't blame me for being rude." With that, he strode away without looking back. After the door was slammed shut, Mu Shumin was so angry that he trembled all over. He stood up agitatedly and pointed in the direction Mu Yaja left, his face red with anger.
Mu Linfeng sat at the side in silence.
Mu Yaja, on the other hand, had thoroughly disappointed him. This brat, it seems that after becoming the Mu Jia's patriarch, he doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. His wings have hardened and he has the ability to fly. A few senior people sat at the side with cold faces, causing the temperature in the huge office to drop to the extreme in an instant.
Mu Yanqing was so angry that his face turned white.
After being humiliated by Mu Yaja just now, it was hard for him to vent his anger. He turned to accuse Mu Linfeng. "Second uncle, I don't mean to say anything bad about him, but this brat is too disrespectful."
"That's right.
Yaja's performance today was truly chilling. Previously, because second brother had promoted him, I had always thought highly of him. Why is it that now? Her temperament is quite unreasonable. This woman is really a scourge if we leave her alive. Second uncle, look, some time ago, he actually went to the Song family to seek revenge for this woman. Now that the Song family is here to complain, where is the Mu family's face? Sigh, that woman really has some tricks up her sleeves. I don't know what she's capable of, but she's actually leading him by the nose.
What a scourge." Chapter 1265.
What should we do now? Don't tell me we're really going to let Yaja marry that woman. That's one more thing to do. The Mu family has always been in favor of marriage between families of equal social status. That woman isn't of equal social status, and she's not even chaste. Is she even worthy? Mu Shumin snorted at his uncle.
"Second brother, what do you say?
Are you really going to watch him fool around and not do anything about it?" "What can I do? I've already said and tried to stop him, but he just won't listen."
"What's the use of that?"
I admit that Xianxia has been in the Mu group for so many years, and he has indeed contributed a lot to the company's development. However, that doesn't mean that he can do whatever he wants just because he has achieved so much. Mu Linfeng muttered, "That lad's achievements are immeasurable, and I'm very satisfied with him. For him to be able to sit on the patriarch's seat, he deserved it. The only thing that displeases me is that he's too stubborn, just like his father. I've always thought that he's a cold person who knows his limits in everything he does. I just didn't expect him to lose his sense of direction after falling in love. That woman seems to be someone who can't be underestimated. To be able to charm that lad to such an extent. He. Mu Linfeng sneered. Young man, it's not good to be too arrogant. You'll eventually lose out in the vanity field. Xianxia is arrogant by nature. He's a little too arrogant." Mu Linfeng interrupted these people's condemnation. However, that lad's capability is obvious to all. Who doesn't make mistakes in their life? Who can pat their chest and say that they've never made a mistake in their life? Forget it. Forget it. Mu Xiumin was a little agitated. Second brother, what do you mean by forget it? Are you really not going to do anything about this? Now's not the time. Xianxia, that woman, must not be left alive. I'll deal with her sooner or later, but now's not the time. What do you mean? Everyone was confused. Mu Linfeng said casually, since he insists on marrying her, we can only smooth things over. After a while, I'll arrange a clean identity for her so that people won't laugh at the Mu family. This was the only thing he could do. Mu Xiumin was so angry that his blood boiled. Clearly, he could not accept Mu Linfeng's decision. I don't agree. Xiumin, listen to me. Mu Linfeng's tone was unyielding. Mu Xiumin had no choice but to swallow his protest and remain silent. Mu Yanqing said from the side, second uncle, sometimes you're really biased. How is second brother better than me? If you had supported me in the past, I would have obeyed your orders, no matter how big or small, like an imperial edict. I wouldn't have disobeyed you in the slightest. Look at him now, he's actually giving you face. How infuriating. Anger flashed across Mu Linfeng's face as he coldly rebuked. How dare you? It's not up to you to judge what I do. You still have the cheek to say that? Since you were young, second uncle has never mistreated you. What did you do, though? You keep saying that you're not inferior to him in any way. What about the reality? The difference between you and Xianxia isn't just a little bit. Xianxia is more capable and outstanding than you. If you were half as capable as him, you wouldn't be like this now. Isn't it because he's the legitimate son and I'm a concubine's son? Mu Yanqing grumbled, feeling wronged. Chapter 1266. Xianxia is still young. Sometimes, he doesn't know any better and will inevitably take the wrong path. I'll try to persuade him when the time comes. If it really doesn't work, we'll come up with another plan. Xiumin, what you said today was too extreme. It won't do you any good to anger him. He paused for a moment before saying with a frown, I know what he's capable of doing. That's why you should know your limits when you speak to him in the future. Got it, second brother. Mu Xiumin reluctantly agreed. After that, Mu Linfeng made a call to the military. Mu Lianjue's men were all deployed from the military. In other words, his every move was under his nose. He was aware of this matter, but he did not do anything because, as Mu Xianxia had expected, he wanted to use his brother to get rid of Xianxia, who was in his way. Unexpectedly, Mu Xianxia's attitude toward this was unexpectedly firm. He had no choice but to stop. With a call from him, the people in the military immediately obeyed the imperial edict and withdrew all their men. When Mu Lianjue learned of this matter, he knew that the situation was hopeless, but he was indignant. Hence, while the men in the military district were sent back, the assassins he had sent out were still on their way. He had no intention of calling them back. Mu Xianxia had caused him to suffer greatly, so he had to give him a taste of his own medicine. The sky gradually darkened. Yu sat on the mountaintop, bored to death. Zhao Linghua was still chattering in his ear, but he chose to automatically block her. She did not seem to have any intention of stopping. Yu finally could not hold it in any longer. Aren't you tired? What? Aren't you tired of talking all the time? She stuck her tongue out and smiled. Now that you mention it, I'm a little thirsty. Thus she pulled his hand. "Let's go. I'll bring you to quench your thirst."
Yu was reluctant, but she was too strong for him to do so. She jogged happily with him and came to a mountain pass. Walking down a long flight of stone steps, Yu suddenly saw a jade-green color. His curiosity was piqued. He raised his head and looked around. At the foot of the mountain, there was a green mountain spring. It was a natural spring. At a glance it was green and clear, so clear that the bottom could be seen. "Let me tell you a secret. The spring water here is called Holy Mother Spring. The spring water is very, very sweet. You can drink it directly. Every household in the village drinks the water from here." Yu was surprised. You can drink it directly? He couldn't be blamed for feeling strange. Nowadays in the city, the pollution was getting worse day by day. Not to mention the spring water, even the small rivers were horribly polluted, and the stench was overwhelming. Although the government had spent a lot of money to clean up the environment, there were no results. The smog was getting heavier and heavier. The river water was also getting more and more turbid. In his entire life, this was the first time he had seen a spring that was so clear and green. Lingling walked to the side of the spring, scooped up a handful of spring water, leaned her face in, and drank a big mouthful. When Yu saw this, he imitated her and scooped up a handful of water to taste. It was indeed sweet. "Isn't it very sweet?" Lingling asked triumphantly. Yu nodded and drank a few more mouthfuls. Apart from the sweetness, the spring water slid down his throat. That taste was very satisfying. Chapter 1267. Let's go. It's getting late. Let's go back for dinner. Yu could not help sighing inwardly. Time was passing so slowly. He wished that tomorrow would arrive sooner so that he could contact his family and return home as soon as possible. It would be great if he could grow a pair of wings. He could then fly back to his mommy's side. As he lamented, Yu and Lingling returned to the Zhao family's house. Dinner was ready. Yu glanced at the table. The dishes were simple and plain, but they were all homegrown vegetables and rice. Sometimes, he envied such a peaceful and simple life. Yu lamented again. After thanking Zhao Xiangjuan and Li Ru, he picked up his bowl. His eating posture was so elegant that it was truly astounding. Li Ru could not help praising. "Ah Jun, look, the children in the city are indeed different. Look at his eating posture. He's just like a young master, so elegant and polite." With that, she did not forget to admonish Lingling and Daodu. "Look at you too. You should learn more from him." Lingling stuck out her tongue indignantly and buried her head in eating. After finishing his meal, Yu put down his bowl and chopsticks and thanked them again. "Thank you, Uncle and Auntie, for preparing such a delicious dinner for me. I'll remember your kindness when I get home." "Hey, child, why are you being so polite?" Li Ru's heart was filled with sweetness when she heard this. Yun Tianyu was serious about this though. His mommy had taught him since he was young that he should remember the kindness of a drop of water. When he got home, he would think of a way to repay this family handsomely. At night, there were only a few small rooms in the Zhao family's house. Usually, Daodu and Lingling slept on the same bed. Now that Yu was here, they could only suffer and squeeze together with the three children. Yu was not used to beds. The Zhao family's bed was especially hard, so he did not sleep well. He tossed and turned in bed and only fell asleep in the middle of the night. In the middle of the night, Yu was half awake when he suddenly heard a commotion outside the door. Yu was awakened by the noise and saw Li Ru running in with her hair disheveled. Without saying anything, she picked up one child in each hand and woke Lingling up. She lowered her voice and said, "Lingling, wake up! Come with me." Lingling had a confused look on her face. She was half awake, but she subconsciously listened to Li Ru and ran behind her. Li Ru carried Yu and Daodu in each of her arms while Lingling followed behind her. She ran up the mountain with the three children in tow. What happened? Lingling followed behind Li Ru, panting heavily. She rubbed her sleepy eyes with one hand, obviously confused. Just now, in the middle of the night, she suddenly heard the courtyard door outside her house being kicked open. She immediately got up from the bed and rushed to the door with Zhao Xiangjuan, only to see a few men in black walking in. Their first words were, "Where's the child?" "Child?" Li Ru did not understand. "What child? Who are you?" "Don't play dumb. Hand over the child you saved today. They followed the trail all the way here. Just as they arrived at the village, they heard that this family had saved a child from the mountains. The child was about 7 or 8 years old and was covered in blood. They were certain that this child was the one they were looking for. Zhao Xianxia immediately realized that these people did not come with good intentions, so he quickly ordered Li Ru to take the child and escape from the back door, leaving him alone to deal with them. Chapter 1268. Zhao Xianxia immediately realized that these people were not friendly, so he hurriedly instructed his wife to run from the back door with the children, leaving him alone to hold them off. The woman, who was flustered, did as she was told. She ran to the room with her hair disheveled. Carrying Yu Yu in one hand and Daodu in the other, she woke Lingling up and ran out from the back door with the 3 children. There was a very secluded mountain path at the back door of the Zhao residence, which led up the stairs. At this time, it was dark and windy. The night wind in the mountain forest was especially strong. It whistled like a knife, stinging one's cheeks. Li Ru ran in a panic, not knowing how far she had run with the children in her arms. As a farmer's woman, she had amazing physical strength because she had been doing farm work since young. Yu Yu and Daodu were very thin, so they did not weigh much in her arms. Lingling, on the other hand, was still young. After running a few miles on the mountain path behind her, she staggered and became a little unsteady. Amma! Amma, what's wrong? What happened? Lingling shouted in panic as she ran behind her. Even if her heels were sore, she did not stop running. Yu Yu remained silent throughout the journey. He lay on his mother's shoulder and looked in the direction of the Zhao residence from time to time. Suddenly, an ominous premonition arose in his heart. Could it be that Mu Lianjue's men had caught up with them first? He felt vaguely uneasy. His small hands clenched tightly into fists, and his palms were wet with sweat. Li Ru led them to a secluded temple on the mountain. This temple was old and cold. It had been abandoned for a long time, and no one had taken care of it. Usually, many children would occasionally come to this temple to play. Other than that, there were few people in this area. Li Ru hid in a small house with the children. She put them down, turned around, closed the door, and locked it. Then, she looked outside through the broken window from time to time. Yu Yu looked around. Under the white moonlight outside the window, he could see the dust flying in the air. Perhaps it had been abandoned for too long, for the corners of the room were full of cobwebs. The table was crooked and had fallen to the side, missing an arm or a leg. A musty smell wafted over. The room was cold and damp. Ling Ling, who was barefooted, was shivering from the cold. She walked behind Li Ru and gently tugged at her clothes. Amma! It's so dark here, I'm scared. Shoo! Don't make a sound. Li Ru reprimanded him sternly, and then looked outside the house vigilantly. Yu Yu curled up in a corner, her mind racing. He didn't know what had happened, but when he was half awake, he vaguely heard a gunshot and a fierce kick on the door. Then, Li Ru ran in with her hair disheveled. Without saying a word, she carried him and Lil P and ran to the back room. He guessed that something must have happened. Yu Yu pursed her lips and looked up at Li Ru, only to see that she was still in shock. Her chest was heaving up and down violently, and her eyes were filled with fear. He walked over and placed his little hand gently on her shoulder. This small action seemed to have given her a dose of reassurance. Only then did Li Ru's emotions ease up a little. Auntie, what happened? Chapter 1269. In an instant, all her fears collapsed. She burst into tears. I don't know either. I really don't know what happened. Your uncle told me to bring you guys away first, so I didn't think much about it. She then gave him a rough account of the situation. Upon hearing this, Yu Yu guessed that the assassin sent by Mu Lianjue had caught up with them. Auntie, why didn't you tell me earlier? Yu Yu looked at her with a complicated gaze. Their target is me. There's no need to implicate you guys. In his heart, he felt grateful and guilty toward Zhao Xianxia. Those people wanted them to hand over the child, so Yu Yu was certain that they were here for him. In fact, as long as Zhao Xianxia handed him over, they would not be implicated. Yu Yu did not want to implicate the innocent, nor did he want to sacrifice unrelated people. Hence, he stood up and walked toward the door. Li Ru pulled him back. Where are you going? Those people are here for me. Yu Yu replied in a low voice. If I go back now, Uncle will be safe. Otherwise,
I'm afraid that something will happen to him.
No. It's too dangerous for you to go back.
They all had guns in their hands now.
It's too dangerous. Li Ru insisted on not going back. She was not cultured, but her nature was simple and honest. She was very kind.
She could not watch such a young child put himself in danger.
Don't worry. Your uncle will be fine. He'll be fine. Li Ru kept repeating these words as if she was hypnotizing herself. She kept consoling herself. Yu felt especially upset. In his heart, he only hoped that Zhao Xiongjuan would be safe and sound. Lingling and Lil Pi were huddled together helplessly, shivering from the cold. She had no idea what was going on, and her eyes were filled with fear. Lil Pi, on the other hand, was also panicking. She snuggled tightly in Lingling's arms and widened her eyes pitifully.
There was only confusion and fear in her eyes.
Li Ru hugged Yu tightly in her arms. She felt extremely uneasy and tormented all the time. Time passed second by second, and it felt like a century. The sky gradually brightened, and it was dawn. Suddenly, shouts could be heard from the mountain.
Aru, Aru! Daodu's mother.
Hearing this, Li Ru was startled.
However, she could vaguely tell that one of the voices belonged to her sister-in-law.
She immediately opened the door. Qinfen? Li Ru called out. A series of messy footsteps ran in her direction. Soon, a group of villagers rushed into the temple.
Seeing that it was Li Ru, her sister-in-law rushed over with tears streaming down her face, wailing loudly. Li Ru, hurry back and take a look.
My father, my father.
Hearing this, Li Ru became nervous. What happened to his father?
The woman slapped her thigh with tears in her eyes. Suddenly, she saw Yun Tianyu behind Li Ru.
She rushed over and pushed his shoulder.
Yun Tianyu was suddenly pushed to the ground. When his back hit the ground, it affected his wound.
He involuntarily sucked in a breath of cold air from the pain and opened his eyes abruptly.
Lingling was shocked. She hurried forward and helped Yu up. Li Ru was stunned and shouted, Qinfen, what are you doing? Why did you push this doll? Chapter 1270. What do you mean by that? She panicked. What's going on? What's wrong with my son's father? Tell me. Tell me quickly.
Qinfen hurriedly said, My son's dying. You'd better go back and take a look.
Ah!
She screamed and immediately ran in the direction of the house.
Yu and Lingling looked at each other before the three children followed closely behind. She ran all the way down the mountain and rushed into the courtyard. Seeing 5 fully armed men, she was stunned at first. Her heart skipped a beat and she took a step back.
However, when she calmed herself down and sized up the men standing in front of her, she realized that they were not the men in black who had broken into the house in the middle of the night. Li Ru looked around with trepidation, only to find that there were a few cold corpses lying at the feet of these people. Her eyes widened in fright and she subconsciously screamed, Ah!
For so many years, Anyang village had been a peaceful place with simple folk customs. Everyone was united and friendly, and no one had ever died here. Hence, this was the first time she had seen such a tragic scene.
She took a closer look and saw that these corpses belonged to none other than the men in black who had broken into the house in the middle of the night with guns in their hands. The thick and pungent smell of blood assaulted her nostrils.
Li Ru was frightened and took a few steps back.
At the same time, she became vigilant and looked at the men in front of her warily.
You, who are you?
The mercenaries turned around and glanced at her before asking coldly, Where's the child? She was even more alarmed when she heard that.
Who are you? Yu and Lingling arrived just as she finished speaking. She anxiously stepped forward and shielded him behind her. When the mercenaries saw Yun Tianyu, the leader of the group took out a photo from his breast pocket. After carefully comparing the photo, he walked toward him. Li Ru became more alert. Qinfen stomped her feet in anger. Aru, why are you still helping this scourge at this point? Hand the child over to them.
No.
The child is innocent. We can't hand him over to them. She insisted stubbornly.
Yu furrowed his brows and glanced at the mercenaries.
When he saw the Hurricane Group logo on their armbands, his brows relaxed and he slowly pushed her away. She was shocked and reached out to pull him back, but Yu placed his hand on the back of hers. Don't worry, Auntie.
With that, he turned around and calmly walked toward the mercenaries. Just when everyone thought that these mercenaries would take the children away in a rough manner, The moment they saw Yun Tianyu standing in front of them, the burly men immediately got down on one knee.
Director Yun, we're here to receive you.
After they finished speaking, they all lowered their heads, and a respectful expression appeared on their cold faces.
This scene caused everyone to be shocked. Did they hear it?
These men actually addressed a 7 or 8-year-old child. In their impression, this was a name on Yun. Everyone was baffled and found it hard to digest this fact. Yu glanced at them and asked in a low voice, "What exactly happened?"
Chapter 1271.
It turned out that, as Vermilion Bird's subordinates, they were sent as the vanguard to search for his whereabouts. They followed his trail all the way here, but they did not expect to be beaten to it by Mu Lianjue's assassins. By the time they arrived, Mu Lianjue's men had already shot and injured Zhao Xiangyuan. The two sides met and exchanged gunfire. Vermilion Bird's vanguard was of superior quality and killed Mu Lianjue's men in less than 10 seconds. At this time, Zhao Xiangyuan was already on the verge of death. He only had one last breath left. They observed for a while and found that the man's thigh was hit by a bullet, but it was not fatal. What was fatal was the bullet that hit his lung. They had experienced too many casualties in their lives. After checking his injury and performing emergency treatment, they found that the bullet had penetrated the man's lung artery. Generally speaking, a bullet in the lung was the cruelest. A person would suffer massive bleeding from a bullet in the lung, resulting in pneumothorax. They would fall into a coma or even go into shock due to breathing difficulties. 2 to 3 hours later, they would die from respiratory failure due to the massive bleeding in the lung. There was no hope. This place was so backward that there was no way to treat such a wound. Yu asked, "Where is he?"
"Where is he?"
"In the house." As soon as she said that, she ran into the house like a madwoman. However, just as she stepped into the house, she vaguely heard a man's heavy breathing coming from the room.
Lingling followed behind her.
The mother-daughter pair rushed into the room, only to be stunned when they saw Zhao Xiangyuan lying on the bed and convulsing all over.
They were stunned for a few seconds.
Then she let out a sorrowful scream. Her legs went weak as she stumbled to the bedside.
Jun. Jun, what's wrong with you?"
"Father!"
Lingling pounced on him as well.
She held the man's face in her hands, only to see that his eyes were rolled back and blood was foaming at the corner of his mouth while his breathing was rapid.
He seemed to be dying.
This realization was undoubtedly the end of the world for her. She felt as if she was about to be drowned out by an overwhelming fear. It was as if the sky was about to collapse.
Zhao Linghua didn't know what had happened.
She didn't know why Zhao Xiangyuan was injured, but seeing him constantly coughing up blood, she knew that this was a bad sign. She was so scared that she opened her mouth and began to cry.
"Father! Father, what's wrong with you?"
"Father!" Amid Lingling's sorrowful cries, Li Ru's body swayed.
She almost blacked out and fainted. She held on to the bed, still unable to calm her emotions.
She did not know any medical knowledge, but looking at Zhao Xiangyuan's condition, she knew that it was over. He could not be saved.
Li Ru's heart was filled with grief.
She threw herself onto Zhao Xiangyuan and burst into tears. Li Ru and Zhao Xiangyuan had always been very loving. The two of them were introduced to each other by their families. Li Ru admired Zhao Xiangyuan's honesty, and Zhao Xiangyuan loved her very much. She had also imagined countless scenes of life and death, but she never thought that one day, she would lose him under such circumstances. The most painful thing in the world is the separation of life and death.
Chapter 1272.
Yu and Lil P rushed into the house and smelled the pungent smell of blood. He walked to the bed and saw the blood on the man's lips.
He was stunned.
Li Ru was on the verge of breaking down. She hugged Zhao Xiangyuan's shoulders tightly and cried. Lil P surrounded Zhao Xiangyuan and their eyes were red. Yu, who was standing at the side, could not bear it and instantly felt extremely guilty. Dao Du glanced at him all of a sudden. He took a step forward, clenched his fists, and punched Yu's body.
"Give me back my father. Give him back to me. Give him back to me."
Lil P cried and punched him. He was so weak that it was pathetic. Yu did not dodge. He was also very sad. Even he did not expect this to happen. How did this happen?
Yu mumbled in confusion.
"It's all your fault. It's all your fault."
Lil P collapsed on the ground and wailed.
He rubbed his eyes and his face was wet with tears. Li Ru and Lil Pi were also in tears. Red Sparrow received news that the man had been found. She immediately rushed over with her men after receiving the coordinates. It was already dawn. When Red Sparrow arrived, she saw that the Zhao family had already started to prepare for the funeral. People were coming in and out. Li Ru had to pull herself together and start to prepare for the funeral. Zhao Xiangjuan had already passed away. Yu Yu sat at the door with a gloomy face. Red Sparrow raised her hand and gestured for her men to wait for her orders. She walked to Yu Yu and squatted down. President Yun, I'm sorry I'm late. Yu Yu's eyes were gloomy as he lowered his head without saying a word. The vermilion bird was slightly startled. She could not help but reach out and gently place her hand on his shoulder. Yu Yu suddenly raised his hand and held her hand tightly. President Yun. Red Sparrow was stunned and looked at him in surprise. Colonel Vermilion Bird, where have you been? Yu Yu gripped her fingers tightly and looked up with a cold expression. Her clear eyes showed no emotion. There was only coldness. Why can Mu Lianjua's men chase us here but you can't? Yu Yu's voice was cold. He looked at her angrily and reprimanded. Tell me the reason. The vermilion bird was stunned. Although this child was young, the aura he exuded was extremely oppressive and domineering. She was slightly shocked. Are you really going to give your all in this operation? Yu Yu said coldly. Don't tell me, Colonel Suzaku, you're worse than those people? I'm very disappointed in you. I'm sorry, President Yun. This time, it's my fault. Vermilion Bird lowered her head in guilt. Yu Yu said mercilessly, reflect on yourself when you get back. Red Sparrow said firmly, yes. She carefully observed his expression and asked in a low voice, President Yun, I'll bring you back now. No. Yu Yu replied. Yu Yu sighed. I'll go back after attending the funeral. She replied. Okay. The news reached the Mu family. Mu Yaja was relieved to know that they had found Yun Tianyou's whereabouts. He heard that the child was safe and only slightly injured. He would be staying there to recuperate for a few days. Once he recovered, Vermilion Bird and the rest would escort him back. Gong Jie had sent more men, and Luca and Njie were on their way. Chapter 1273. When Mu Yaja arrived with Yun Shirshir, Xiao Yichen was lying on the bed. His face was pale and lifeless. The moment he woke up, he made a fuss about getting out of bed. It was only when he received news that Yu Yu's whereabouts had been found that he felt at ease. He obediently lay back on the bed and drank some porridge. The doctor said that the wounds on his body were only superficial and did not affect his muscles or bones. It was just that the wounds were infected and were not treated in time. As a result, they became inflamed and caused a high fever. Fortunately, Xiao Yichen's physical fitness was strong. After a night of rest, his fever quickly subsided. As for the reason why he fainted, it was because he had exhausted too much of his energy. He only recovered some of his vitality after taking a few bottles of nutrient fluids. The doctor could not help but marvel at this child's good physique. Yun Shirshir walked into the ward and slowly walked to his bedside. She lowered her head and carefully sized up Mu Yichen's pale face. Mu Yichen heard movement and slowly opened his eyes. When he saw Yun Shirshir, his cracked lips moved and two words escaped from his mouth. Mommy! His eyes instantly reddened. When the mother and son met again, it felt like a lifetime had passed. They had been apart for a few days, but it felt like a century had passed. Yichen! Yun Shirshir gently hugged his shoulders with reddened eyes. She did not dare to use too much strength for fear of hurting his wounds. When she thought of how he had suffered so much because of her, her heart ached even more. She was so sad that tears fell from her eyes. I'm sorry. Yichen, I'm sorry. Xiao Yichen tried his best to open his eyes wider. He lifted his heavy hands and hugged her shoulders. Mommy, I'm back. Yun Shirshir hugged him a little tighter and choked out. Xiao Yichen, Mommy missed you so much. Little Yichen's expression changed a little as his eyes reddened all of a sudden. He could not hold back the tears that he had been desperately trying to hold back, and they gushed out of his eyes. He hugged her even tighter and rested his head on her neck. He said sadly, Mommy, Xiao Yichen missed you too. Mu Yaja slowly walked to the bedside and sat on his side. He wrapped his long arms around the mother and son and pulled them into his embrace. The three of them hugged each other tightly. For the first time in his life,
Mu Yichen had the urge to cry. He had never felt this way before. The warmth that was injected into his heart flowed along with his blood, causing his originally cold limbs to gradually warm up. Xiao Yichen suddenly raised his head and smiled at Mu Yaja. "Daddy, Xiao Yichen listened to me and protected mommy and little brother well." Mu Yaja looked at the little fellow with a complicated expression. He looked at his pale face. He did not know what the two children had gone through along the way. Even Xiao Yichen, who had always been strong, was exhausted. For a moment, he had mixed feelings. Relief, pity, guilt, and self-blame. All of them welled up. Looking at Xiao Yichen's proud little face, Mu Yaja could not help but laugh. This little fellow. He did not disappoint him. At such a young age, he already had such great responsibilities. Therefore, he was not stingy with his praise. "Xiao Yichen, you did well." When Xiao Yichen heard this, he could not help but smile in surprise, revealing his neat, snow-white teeth. Chapter 1274. Daddy rarely praised him. No matter what he did, he rarely received Daddy's approval and praise. This was just a few pieces, but it was undoubtedly the highest praise for him. Xiao Yichen was greatly encouraged. "What do you think?" Mu Yaja's eyes flashed with a smile, but his gaze was full of admiration and approval. Mu Yichen's face couldn't help but turn slightly red. To him, Mu Yaja's praise was the highest praise for him. In his heart, he felt a little bit of a sense of accomplishment because he received Mu Yaja's approval. "Daddy, this is what I should be doing. Protecting mommy is also my responsibility, isn't it?" He licked his dry lips and suddenly smiled as he said that. Mu Yaja couldn't help but reach out and ruffle his hair lovingly. The warmth from his palm was so real. Mu Yichen was extremely greedy for this warmth and closed his eyes contentedly. "Daddy, mommy, when are we going to bring little brother home?" Xianxia gently rubbed his little hand and gently coaxed. "When you're better, we'll bring you home together, okay?" Mu Yichen immediately said, "I'm already better, there's no problem. I can get out of bed and walk around." Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She reached out and scratched his upturned nose bridge with her finger. She rebuked, "Little idiot, you're so badly injured. You should rest in bed for a few more days. Okay? Mommy will accompany you." Mu Yichen was a little happy. When he heard that Xianxia wanted to accompany him, his face couldn't help but turn red. He was a little shy. At the same time, it was a dreamlike surprise. Growing up, he didn't lack for anything. Basically, no matter what he wanted, he could have it all with just a word. As the future successor of the Mu family, he was born with a golden spoon in his mouth. Since then, he had been doted on by everyone. Everyone in the Mu family revolved around him. Naturally, he didn't lack anything. If he had to say what he lacked, the only thing he lacked was companionship. Sometimes, he really envied children of the same age who could have so much companionship. When he first entered kindergarten, Mu Yichen had to admit how jealous he was when he saw the children running towards their parents who had been waiting outside the school for a long time and throwing themselves into their arms. Every time this happened, he would imagine when he would be able to see his daddy and mommy standing together at the school gate, patiently waiting for him. But every time, he was greeted by a cold car. What he wanted was the company of his parents. For ordinary children, the company of their parents was often very simple and easy to obtain. However, for someone of his status, this request seemed so extravagant that he could only look forward to it. In fact, every time he received those expensive gifts, he wanted to throw them on the ground and tell his daddy, "This is not what I want. What I want is for you to accompany me. Even if it's just a little bit of time every day." His biggest wish was that his daddy could spend more time with him every day. Just a little bit more. Although this thought was a little greedy, it was his most sincere wish. However, it was different now. He had a mommy. Mommy would accompany him and patiently care for him by his bedside. She would peel fruits for him, cut them into small pieces and patiently feed them to him. Chapter 1275. A child's world was so simple. What they wanted was usually very simple. At the thought that his mommy would be by his side for the next few days, Mu Yichen's heart leaped with joy. He even felt that it was quite worth it to get such treatment in exchange for all his injuries. When he thought about how he had gotten injured in the past during the special training camp and how he had pulled through in the end, he really felt a little pitiful when he thought about it. Sometimes,
This daddy of his was really lousy. Mommy is still the best. As he thought about this, he couldn't help but put his thoughts on his face as he snuggled up in Yunshusher's arms. At the same time, from the corner of his eye, he lightly glared at Wuxia, as if to say in disdain, "Mommy still loves me the most." After saying this, he didn't forget to stick out his tongue at Wuxia provocatively. Yunshusher didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she couldn't help pinching his cheeks. This kid had only been with Yu for a short period of time, but he had also become so clever. In the past, no matter what, he would never have said such a thing. Mu Yichen beamed with joy and hugged Yunshusher tightly, completely ignoring Wuxia. Wuxia felt that he had been left out. This kid. Wuxia chided in his heart, but in the end, from the bottom of his eyes, there was a rare doting and playful look that was rarely seen. The most bland happiness was nothing more than this. He thought in his heart. Mu Yichen suddenly thought of something and his good-looking brows suddenly raised slightly. He lifted his little face and whispered into Yunshusher's ear, "Mommy, when are you going to give birth to a younger sister for me?" When these words entered Yunshusher's ears, her face immediately flushed red. She pursed her lips, obviously a little shy. Mu Yichen's question had really caught her off guard and she was completely unprepared. Wuxia didn't hear what Mu Yichen whispered into Yunshusher's ear. He only saw her face change, as if she was a little embarrassed. Yunshusher rebuked and poked Mu Yichen's head. She laughed and said, "What are you thinking about all day long?" "Mommy, are you shy?" Mu Yichen looked at her, black and white eyes, bright, shining with a naughty luster. Yunshusher blushed when she heard this. Wuxia glanced at him and couldn't help but ask, "What were you whispering about?" Before Mu Yichen could say anything, Yunshusher immediately said, "Don't tell him." Wuxia's eyes narrowed dangerously as he swept his gaze over Yunshusher and Xiao Yichen. In reality, Mu Yichen had always wanted a younger sister. He had even fantasized that if he had an adorable younger sister, he would definitely dote on her to the core and give her a lot of love. He would treat her like a little princess in the palm of his hand and make her happy and blissful. Perhaps this had something to do with his personality. Xiao Yichen had been instilled with strict teaching since he was young. This made him extraordinarily responsible at a young age. He liked to take care of the weak. He wanted a younger sister because he had seen a pair of siblings outside an ice cream shop. The older brother was very tall, about 1.8 meters tall, while the younger sister was as small as a bean, riding on the older brother's shoulder.